Welcome to KUMO-AUDIOBOOK. Chapter 151 to 186, Chapter 152. By the way, where is this? 1,271 words. Chapter 152. By the way, where is this? God folded his arms across his chest, his black gold armor shimmering in the sunlight, while the deep cosmic starry sky on his face slowly rotated. I truly didn't expect you to be strong to such an extent. You truly live up to being a stowaway from another world. He turned his head to look around. Where is that bald head who exists outside the rules? Did he not come with you? That is truly a pity. I won't be able to catch you both in one net. Behind God, overwhelming cosmic radiation had already dyed the world behind him purple, leaving only death and desolation wherever it passed. Hearing God's words, a curve formed at the corner of King's mouth. The world behind him was already covered by raging energy, standing its ground against the cosmic radiation filling the sky, even showing signs of suppressing it. At this moment, King's aura of a powerhouse was simply off the charts, but the words he spoke couldn't help but make one's mouth twitch. Why is a maggot hiding in the shadows pretending to be some big shot? Catch us all in one net. If Saitama really showed up in front of you, you'd piss yourself on the spot. Besides, King flashed in front of God, grabbing the other's head with one hand, as an irresistible and terrifying force erupted from his palm. I don't think you can beat me, even if you turned your face into the likeness of the starry sky. King stomped on the ground, his entire body's energy burning like flames. He gripped God's head and soared into the sky at high speed, the two instantly turning into a crimson streak of light that charged straight out of Earth. Seeing his actions, God immediately guessed King's intention and secretly thought it was bad. Does this guy want to choose a battlefield far away from Earth? What a troublesome fellow. However, wanting to take me away from Earth with just this kind of pure strength is wishful thinking. God suddenly raised his fist, the surface of which was actually surrounded by a brilliant galaxy, with destructive energy rippling within as he smashed it fiercely forward. Above Earth, a violent explosion manifested in the lonely and silent starry sky, and the rampaging energy shockwave shattered several nearby satellites. King simply raised his hand, easily catching God's fist with his palm, his lips moving slightly. Although there was no medium to support his voice in space, the energy that had already solidified into substance could act as a medium. God heard clearly the two words King uttered. Blast. A blood-soaked figure abruptly appeared beside King. The middle-aged man who suddenly appeared raised his hand to throw away the shattered goggles on his face and raised his hands with a chuckle. Keep it up, King, you're the strongest man on Earth. I'll leave this guy God to you. That's right, the reason King was a step slower than Sun Sperm was that he chose to rescue Blast first, and then brought Blast back to Earth with him. The method to find Blast was also very simple. King followed the spatial traces left where Blast and Diamond Sperm had disappeared, and directly tore open the entire pocket dimension on the spot, finding the half-dead Blast inside. And the reason King chose to prioritize rescuing Blast was also obvious. It was for this very moment. The moment he saw Blast, God seemed to think of something, and his whole body couldn't help but stiffen. It's that human who can use spatial abilities. Not good. By the time he reacted, it was already too late. Blast, bleeding from his 7 orifices, forcibly manipulated the spatial energy he currently couldn't control, enveloping these two powerhouses whose strength was far superior to his. Spatial transfer. Accompanied by a roaring sound, the space where King and God were located instantly began to twist into a vortex, and then both disappeared from the spot. Watching King and God's auras vanish without a trace, Blast floated alone in the lonely starry sky, blood already covering his face. He coughed twice, as if choked by blood, but a smile hung on his face. I'm old. As expected, defeating God or whatever, is best left to the new generation. Cough cough. Damn, it hurts. The blood is choking me. Blast, who had just wanted to act cool and detached, couldn't help but cough violently. Blood flowed back into his trachea, making him cough incessantly. Better head back to Earth first. Blast raised his hand, wanting to activate spatial power to transfer himself back to Earth, but after a few tries, nothing moved. A sense of weakness from the depths of his soul spread out. This is bad. The spatial power was completely exhausted in the transfer just now. How do I get back now? Looking at the beautiful blue planet before him, Blast floated half dead in the starry sky, like a piece of space junk. You look truly pathetic, Blast. This is the first time I've seen you beaten so badly. A spatial rift suddenly appeared in front of him, and several figures with indistinguishable faces on the other side of the spatial rift spoke, staring at him with half-smiles. Get lost. Blast cursed with a laugh, but the action of smiling made him grimace in pain. The opponent was God himself, and there was also the most powerful god awakened in history. It's already quite impressive that I'm not dead yet. After 2 seconds of silence, the figures on the other side of the spatial rift laughed in unison. True enough. I have to say, you're really tough, kid. Let's send you back to Earth first. Those injuries of yours aren't light. Blast nodded, then relaxed his guard completely as if a weight had been lifted. The spatial fluctuations around him began to vibrate. He was about to be teleported back to Earth, back to Z-City, which had already turned into a wasteland. Suddenly, the inquiry of those teammates reached Blast's ears. Is it really okay to leave God himself to that king, who is known as the strongest man on Earth? Hearing this, a brilliant smile appeared on Blast's face. He forced his heavily injured body to give a thumbs up. I guarantee that king will definitely be able to expel God. He's much stronger than me. Meanwhile, near Jupiter, the world-destroying blood dragon was still galloping rapidly through the starry sky. Although its size was gradually shrinking, its momentum was still full of vigor. Sun Sperm, who was bitten tightly by the dragon's head, couldn't break free no matter what. The 2 rows of dragon teeth formed from energy were as hard as 10,000-year divine iron. No matter how Sun Sperm attacked, he couldn't break them. Are you kidding me? Why can't I even knock this thing away? Punch after punch, violent energy shockwaves roared continuously in the starry sky, causing spatial vibrations wherever they passed. Sun Sperm was, after all, a divine rank existence. Under the continuous attacks, the head of the blood dragon finally turned into crimson fragments and shattered. Damn! I finally broke free. Sun Sperm cursed in annoyance. Looking at the bloody hole in his abdomen, he wiped it lightly, and it recovered as before. By the way, where is this? Looking at Jupiter right in front of him and the powerful pulling force coming from his body at every moment, Sun Sperm was dazed. Having almost never studied any astronomical knowledge, he had no idea which planet he had flown to. Chapter 152, Chapter 153, I refuse. 927 words. Chapter 153, I refuse. Sun Sperm floated in the deep space of the universe, resisting the powerful gravitational pull from Jupiter, staring blankly around. What is this super large planet? And what is that planet next to it, surrounded by a ring of yellow light? Where the hell did this guy send me? Sun Sperm was stunned. Where did that punch send him? Is this still the solar system? Just then, a slightly confused voice suddenly sounded in Sun Sperm's ear. Huh! It's alive. Are you an alien? Hello. The moment he heard the voice, Sun Sperm felt like he had been struck by lightning, and he jumped in shock. Where the hell did a person come from in the universe? Sun Sperm's figure flickered several thousand meters away before he dared to turn his head and look at the source of the sound. He saw a completely naked bald man floating in the air, covered in a lot of dust, observing him curiously. Strangely, although there was clearly no medium in the universe to transmit sound, the bald man's words seemed to ignore all physical rules and accurately entered Sun Sperm's ears. Why aren't you speaking? I almost forgot, aliens don't seem to know human languages. Can you send brainwaves? Hearing this, Sun Sperm couldn't hold back. He was a native-born monster of Earth, and now he was being mistaken for an alien. Wait, why does this guy look a little familiar? Looking at that familiar bald head, Sun Sperm finally remembered. That iconic bald head, isn't this guy the S-Class hero, One Punch Man? Back when he was still with the Monster Association, due to his cautious nature, Sun Sperm had read through the files of all S-Class heroes and memorized their characteristics. And a shining bald head was the characteristic of One Punch Man. So he was just a small S-class punk. That makes things easy. Sun Sperm, who had just instantly killed almost all the S-class heroes, regained his confidence, twisted his neck, and the flames on his body surged against the wind, almost forming a sheet of golden light. Oh, I don't know how you managed to survive in the universe like me, but since you ran into me, just obediently die. As soon as he finished speaking, Sun Sperm stomped on space, using the shattered space to rush out rapidly, and his fist, containing power comparable to a nuclear explosion, slammed fiercely into Saitama's face. Boom, boom, boom. A violent explosion sounded, and a golden energy storm spread wildly outwards from the point of impact. The violent shockwave swept in all directions, causing the entire area within 100 miles to tremble continuously because of this power. However, even though this strike unleashed such terrifying power, Sun Sperm's expression did not improve at all. Instead, it gradually froze. What's going on? He only felt that his hand was numb and painful, as if an ordinary person had punched a steel plate hard, it wouldn't budge at all. Saitama stood firmly in place, without even moving an inch, his head still resting against Sun Sperm's fist, his gaze gradually becoming unfriendly. I'm telling you, are all aliens this rude? Punching me the moment we meet. And you clearly speak Earth language, why are you pretending to be mute? Confirming that the guy in front of him was either an alien or a monster, Saitama clenched his fist tightly and then threw an unadorned punch. In an instant, Sun Sperm's mind went blank. He acted almost without hesitation, following his dangerous intuition to initiate a full-power defense, and the golden flames burning fiercely on his body instantly contracted, turning into a golden light shield. The next second, Saitama's fist landed on Sun Sperm's abdomen, making a muffled thud. Ugh! Sun Sperm felt as if he had been hit head-on by a speeding asteroid. An unparalleled immense force struck his abdomen, making it feel completely pierced through. His figure flew backward like a cannonball, transforming into a fiery red meteor that slammed directly onto the surface of Jupiter. This gas giant immediately had a massive hole smashed into it, and a portion of the enormous impact force absorbed by Sun Sperm was dissipated. He knelt in the void, golden blood incessantly spurting from his mouth, his eyes filled with terror. Holy crap! You really are one punch man. Sun Sperm couldn't have imagined that after evolving so many times, reaching the ultimate lifeform form of an ultimate lifeform. Not only could he not defeat the strongest man on Earth, King right after emerging, but he was also effortlessly crushed by this bald man in front of him. Why? I refuse. Sun Sperm's face was distorted with rage. The blood hole in his abdomen recovered instantly, and his entire body erupted with world-shaking power, instantly crossing thousands of miles to pounce directly on Saitama. Die. Discovering that Sun Sperm hadn't been killed by his punch and was launching such a strong counterattack as if nothing happened, Saitama was stunned, and then his eyes grew brighter. This guy seems kind of interesting. Having accidentally encountered an opponent who couldn't be killed with one punch, Saitama's usually calm heart was stirred, and he decided to increase his strength by 2 more points to see what would happen. Bang! Sun Sperm hadn't even had time to react when an unadorned fist slammed directly into his chest. The immense power utterly crushed Sun Sperm's chest and created a terrifying storm behind him, causing the surface of Jupiter behind him to dissipate slightly. Chapter 153, Chapter 154, Desperate Sun Sperm. 1102 words. Chapter 154, Desperate Sun Sperm. Sun Sperm's expression became scattered from the punch, and his brain experienced a brief shutdown. Only after 0.1 seconds did he finally recover, his eyes revealing extreme terror. Looking at Saitama, who was close at hand, the confidence he had built up from his great power vanished instantly. Gwa! Don't you dare come near me. Sun Sperm was truly broken this time. He could feel that the previous punch had almost allowed him to taste death. This guy is definitely not someone I can fight. I need to escape quickly. Run. Realizing that the bald man in front of him was an existence he absolutely could not fight, Sun Sperm turned and ran without hesitation, his body rapidly traversing the void. After losing the resistance of air, Sun Sperm's speed reached near light speed, and he vanished from the surface of Jupiter in an instant. Hurry up and leave. The planet behind him rapidly receded as Sun's sperm sped through the vast starry sky, occasionally glancing back in terror. Only after confirming that the shining marinated egg was no longer in sight did he slowly breathe a sigh of relief. Good thing this great one has super speed. He's just a mere human. You run pretty fast. Are you a speed-type monster? Seeing you covered in flames, you look like an internal combustion engine. Hey, the familiar voice sounded in his ear, causing Sun's sperm's hair to stand on end, and his soul trembled. He stiffly turned his head, only to see a completely naked bald man extending both hands forward, hovering straight in mid-air, adopting the posture of Superman flying. Those dull eyes were staring straight at him. Sun's sperm wanted to cry but had no tears. He really couldn't stand this guy. Why the hell can't I shake him off? At this moment, Saitama's interest grew stronger, and he developed a greater desire to examine the flame monster before him. The punch he threw just now was at the boundary of a normal punch, yet it still failed to kill the opponent instantly. This situation made Saitama feel excited. It had been a long time since he encountered such a durable enemy. Since he lost all his hair, the last person he met who was this resistant was his good friend King, truly the legendary king of durability. Feeling the bald demon king's intense gaze, the pressure in Sun's sperm's heart skyrocketed, and his flying speed increased even further. The desire for survival constantly stimulated Sun's sperm's potential, allowing him to more fully integrate the divine power within his body, making his strength increasingly formidable. But even though he grew stronger, Sun's sperm still dared not stop. The bald man in front of him had already left a deep psychological scar. This chase lasted for nearly 20 minutes. Even the sun behind them gradually receded, the only light source vanished, and all that remained visible was the vast expanse of the Milky Way. Sun's sperm's fiercely burning golden flames became the greatest light source in this darkness and silence. His eyes were bloodshot, and he was on the verge of collapse. What kind of joke is this? Beside him, Saitama consistently maintained a lazy flying posture, as if he were playing a game with him. Saitama was indeed happy to play with this guy. After all, it was his first time encountering such a durable toy. The bald demon king tends to show great patience toward anyone capable of surviving one of his punches. Moreover, Saitama could generally discern the severity of a monster's past atrocities, and whether the opponent was an evil or benevolent type of monster. Although the sun sperm in front of him possessed terrifying power, strangely, this guy had barely killed any humans. He was an undeniable good monster. Consecutive normal punches. Saitama maintained his near-light speed flight while hundreds and thousands of red fist shadows smashed toward him. Every punch carried fierce gales, wrapped in immense force capable of shattering space. Damn it! Sun's sperm's expression drastically changed. He desperately activated his defensive stance to block, yet a few punches still dimmed the flames covering his body, and cracks began to spread across his physique. He was struck by the consecutive normal punches until his consciousness blurred, his vitality was diminished, and he couldn't help but bleed from his 7 orifices. So strong. This guy is definitely not someone I can fight against. Sun's sperm fell into despair. At this moment, he finally understood the feelings of those S-class heroes before him. That feeling of powerless despair no matter what, he couldn't escape it, couldn't fight it, and even his strongest attacks could only tickle the opponent. By this point, those who still haven't given up resisting are either those with an extremely strong will to survive or pure reckless fools. Sun's sperm belonged to the category of beings with an extremely strong desire for survival. When facing an opponent he truly couldn't defeat, he often resorted to the most desperate counterattack. Even a cornered rabbit will bite, let alone a god-level monster. Blazing sun. Sun's sperm spat out the golden blood in his mouth, and the flames covering his body surged wildly, transforming him almost entirely into a dazzling sun. Overwhelming heat erupted from his body. This extremely high temperature even completely warped the surrounding space. The next second, countless golden flames began to converge, and the brilliant light rapidly compressed. A beam of light exuding god-level pressure, wrapped in destructive power, shot straight forward. I'm going to explode with you. God-slaying cannon. Saitama looked at the incredibly cool move before him, a hint of envy flashing in his eyes. He then stood upright in mid-air and began stretching his joints. After rotating his joints a couple of times, he raised his right fist high, his muscles bulging slightly from the effort. Serious punch. The punch, still lacking any special effects, struck out, yet the power it unleashed shook heaven and earth. That force, crushing everything in its path, erupted from his fist. Sun Sperm was a true god-level monster, significantly stronger even than Boros in his collapsing star-roaring cannon form. Therefore, the god-slaying cannon he unleashed by burning his life force was even more terrifying than Boros's collapsing star-roaring cannon. If Boros's collapsing star-roaring cannon could only flatten the surface without touching the planetary core, then Sun Sperm's cannon could directly and devastatingly shatter the entire planet into fragments. The next second, the fist and the god-slaying cannon collided head-on in the starry sky. Chapter 154, Chapter 155, His One of Our Own. 1061 words. Chapter 155, His One of Our Own. In an instant, the starry sky trembled. To stay alive, Sun Sperm had clearly given his all, even going as far as burning his life origin to enhance his god-slaying cannon. The crimson beam grew increasingly terrifying, with destructive energy capable of turning an entire planet into cosmic dust constantly erupting within it. However, a plain-looking fist simply smashed through the violent god-slaying cannon. Boom! 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 An energy shockwave radiated wildly from the point of collision, and the god-slaying cannon, split in two, blasted toward the far reaches of the universe. A small celestial body on the verge of becoming a planet, originally rotating slowly in its orbit, was suddenly struck head-on by a crimson beam that pierced through the heavens and earth. Bang! The planet was easily pierced through, and a violent explosion rippled within it. The surface instantly turned crimson before it blew apart, turning into cosmic dust. Saitama looked down and found that his fist had actually suffered a tiny scratch. Although it disappeared in the next second, it still made his eyes light up. Not bad, you actually managed to hurt me. You really gave me quite a surprise. At this moment, Sun Sperm had lost all his strength and means. His body had become withered, and the once roaring golden flames had turned into tiny flickers. He was completely exhausted. When he realized that Saitama had taken his god-slaying cannon head-on with only a tiny scratch to show for it, he completely broke down. Are you even fucking human? Especially hearing Saitama's praise, this so-called praise was like a sharp knife driven deep into Sun Sperm's heart, leaving him utterly demoralized. So, the powerful attack I gave everything for, was just a negligible touch in someone else's eyes. Sun Sperm remembered that since his evolution, he had always viewed humans as ants weaker than himself, believing that all existence weaker than him was an original sin. This was the arrogance of the strong, and the curse of power. And now, Sun Sperm had encountered a terrifying existence countless times stronger than himself. He finally understood. To survive, there was only one way left. Sun Sperm's expression turned fierce, and he immediately began to charge toward Saitama. His form streaked through the void like a dark gold light, carrying a momentum of reckless desperation. Hey! You're coming again. But you're almost dried up. Saitama watched Sun Sperm, who was charging desperately even though he looked like a dried corpse, with a hint of confusion in his eyes. But he was someone who always adhered to the principle of respecting what he didn't understand. Since Sun Sperm had such courage and such disregard for life and death, he would give him one more punch to show the guy some respect. Thinking of this, Saitama silently raised his fist, preparing to strike the incoming Sun Sperm. Just as the distance between them was less than 100 meters, Sun Sperm suddenly bent his knees and performed a sliding kneel for over 100 meters through the void. When he reached Saitama, he kowtowed heavily, even shattering the void in front of him. This lowly one failed to recognize your greatness. Please give me another chance. A chance to serve you like an ox or a horse. I want to be your pet. I'm one of your own. After this outburst, Saitama got a case of the goosebumps. He didn't know whether to punch or not. Finally, he sighed helplessly and silently lowered his fist. After all, the guy had already cast aside his pride to beg for mercy like this. Killing him now wouldn't sit right with Saitama. Looking at Sun Sperm, who was still kowtowing incessantly, Saitama hesitated for a few seconds before asking, You want to be my pet?" Hearing this, Sun Sperm immediately realized that his chance for survival had arrived. He kowtowed even faster, his head becoming a blur, his tone fanatical. "Yes, Lord. I have yearned to be a part of humanity since I was a child. Today, I finally found the opportunity to show my devotion to you. I'm one of your own. I'm not very good at raising pets. Do you eat dog food? Does the Lord want me to be a dog? Of course, no problem. I am your most loyal little dog. Woof woof woof. Dial back the flames on your body, or you'll burn the furniture later." "Yes, Master. Understood, Master. Woof woof woof. Actually, if you want to play a dog, you don't need to add 3 woofs after every sentence." "Yes, Master. Woof woof woof. Forget it, whatever you want." Just like that, Saitama flew toward Earth, leading the fawning Sun Sperm. He hadn't expected that on a simple return trip, he would end up picking up a powerful dog along the way. Looking at the simple-styled profile next to him, Sun Sperm's heart, which had been hanging by a thread, finally settled, and he relaxed a bit. He had heard that One Punch Man was on very good terms with the strongest man on Earth, King. He was truly safe now. The other S-class heroes were no match for him. In this world, he only feared the strongest man on Earth, King, and this bald man whose strength was simply monstrous. Other than them, he could do as he pleased. Just then, an angry voice suddenly echoed in Sun Sperm's mind, laced with the fury of betrayal. "You dare to yield to the enemy. You are unworthy of my power. I shall take it back." Sun Sperm felt his vision shift. When it cleared, he had arrived in a pure white mental space. Before him, a tall and twisted humanoid creature stood like a pillar supporting the heavens in the white space, radiating anger. "You carried so much of my power, yet you chose to yield and lose to a human. You are unworthy of my power." God reached out, intending to reclaim the divine power within Sun Sperm. However, in the next second, a confused voice abruptly appeared in Sun Sperm's mental space. What was the designer here thinking? "There are white walls everywhere. Don't you think the glare is too much?" Both God and Sun Sperm froze, looking in disbelief at the bald man who had appeared there. Chapter 155, Chapter 156, Has the option module returned from the dead? 1192 words. Chapter 156, Has the option module returned from the dead? Looking at this suddenly appearing bald man, God's state of mind had become as steady as could be. He had now reached a point where he would no longer feel shocked by any action taken by the bald demon king. This guy was an existence that transcended rules, so nothing he did was strange, even if it was inexplicably breaking into someone else's soul space. Speaking of which, what is this guy here for? God looked suspiciously at Sun Sperm. Based on Sun Sperm's perspective, he had just witnessed with his own eyes this guy shamelessly choosing to acknowledge a master. In other words, the master this guy just acknowledged is coming to get me. Thinking of this, God suddenly felt an explosion of pressure. One must know that in the real world, he was currently still facing off against a certain monster that was constantly growing stronger. If another heaven-defying bald man joined in, it would truly be game over. God was now frantically thinking of beating a retreat. Maybe I should give up on the invasion. After all, Sun Sperm, my strongest subordinate, has defected, and it would be very difficult for me to fight 2 monsters who don't belong to this world alone. Looking at it this way, choosing to run away back to the high-dimensional world had instead become the best choice. No matter how strong King was, he was ultimately just a low-dimensional being with great power. As long as God escaped back to the high-dimensional world, the other party wouldn't be able to touch him. God's only concern was whether that logic-defying dead bald man would directly punch through the passage between the low and high dimensions. Forget it, let's try it first and worry about it if I get beaten to death. As for that guy Sun Sperm, God glanced at him and prepared to withdraw his divine power. A fellow who cannot be controlled should be crushed to death directly. Sensing that the power within his body seemed to show signs of being drained away, Sun Sperm's face immediately filled with terror, and he began to charge across this pure white mental space. He performed a handsome sliding kneel, sliding for hundreds of meters, and accurately flew in front of Saitama, beginning to kowtow frantically. "Master, save me. This guy wants to take your little pet to the slaughterhouse. I'm not afraid of death, I'm only afraid that after I die, I won't be able to continue accompanying Master." Speaking to the point of deep emotion, Sun Sperm couldn't help but burst into tears, looking exactly like a pained figure who couldn't bear to leave his master. Seeing this scene, although Saitama really wanted to ask, "Have we known each other for more than half an hour? Is there a need to be so sentimental?" But Sun Sperm was, after all, his newly acquired pet. This linear creature that looked like a bunch of mops mixed together, that guy actually wanted to send his little pet to the slaughterhouse. Thinking of this, Saitama's displeased gaze immediately fell upon God. "Oh, you have to look at the master before you hit the dog. You want to send my pet to the slaughterhouse without a word? That's very rude, you know." As his voice fell, Saitama threw a punch. Even though they were in Sun Sperm's own mental world, the power of the punch didn't diminish in the slightest. Boom! God's mental body didn't even have a chance to resist, it was blown apart on the spot, turning into wisps and strands of light spots. Sensing that the suction force within his body had disappeared, Sun Sperm realized that God had been wiped out by his newly acknowledged master. "Gwa! Long live master! We love and respect you." Looking at Sun Sperm, who was as fawning as a licking dog, Saitama helplessly scratched his non-existent hair. It seemed like he had taken in something quite extraordinary. Meanwhile, 3 light-years away from Earth. Puhr. God's whole body shook, and blood couldn't help but gush from his mouth. Even his vision became somewhat blurred. The soul he had just split off was actually destroyed by that punch, and he didn't have time to withdraw his power at all. With his mental body directly blown apart, God's main body also suffered a formidable backlash. The time it took for Saitama and Sun Sperm to fight seemed long, but in reality, the battle was resolved in less than 20 minutes. In those 20 minutes, King had already engaged in several rounds of confrontation with God. King's entire body was still erupting with a crimson energy as deep as an abyss and as vast as a sea. This energy was so powerful that it even made the dark and silent starry sky burn with crimson flames. He looked at God, whose aura had suddenly weakened a bit, and seemed to have guessed something. However, at this moment, King did not choose to press the advantage. Instead, he watched the ethereal blue data panel that suddenly appeared before his eyes. Ding! Congratulations to the host for triggering an option. Holy crap, has the option module returned from the dead? Since transmigrating to this world, King hadn't seen the system issue a new option for a long time. Instead, it was constantly broadcasting his attribute updates every day. Since breaking his limiter, even though King didn't deliberately train, his attributes were still steadily growing, though the growth rate was relatively slow. As for options, they only appeared when he first transmigrated to this world, but he hadn't seen them since. If it weren't for the options suddenly popping up this time, King would have thought those option rewards were just a novice gift pack for the start. Option 1. Violently beat the god in front of you until he kneels, letting this fellow who appeared in the low-dimensional world and considers himself a higher being see what it means by there is always someone better, and what a supernumerical monster with infinite adaptation is. Option 1 reward, system item ×2, random ability enhancement ×1. Option 2, stall for time with the god in front of you as much as possible. After meeting up with the bald demon king, kill him with the force of thunder. A true powerhouse must be steady, well-prepared, and comprehensive in all aspects to achieve great things. Option 2 reward, random ability enhancement ×1, all attributes increased by 5%. King's eyes quickly scanned the 2 blue data panels and soon locked onto option 1. The style of option 2 wasn't to his liking, and the rewards included an increase in all attributes. What he needed more now was not this insignificant attribute boost, but various items from the system. Such an increase to combat power was much greater than that 5% attribute boost. Not an option I like, exclude it directly. System, I choose option 1. Ding. Congratulations to the host for choosing option 1. The reward will take effect after defeating the god in front of you. Chapter 156, Chapter 157, The Great Battle. 1073 words. Chapter 157, The Great Battle. After accepting the option, King looked up at the god, his aura becoming increasingly violent. Soaring energy swirled in the starry sky. To claim the reward as quickly as possible, and fueled by his frustration at being suppressed for so long, King charged once more, heading straight for the god. Tens of thousands of meters were crossed in the blink of an eye as the several thousand-meter-long blood dragon roared and lunged in front of the god. Sensing the change in King's aura, the god leaned forward. The void beneath his feet exploded amidst chaotic energy as he also transformed into a streak of light and dashed out. In an instant, the violent blood dragon and the chaotic, colorful streak of light collided fiercely. A massive energy shockwave radiated outward from the point of impact. The void quaked, and space itself seemed unable to withstand such a terrifying energy impact, shattering repeatedly. Under the continuous erosion of the chaotic light, the several thousand-meter-long blood dragon actually developed fine cracks, looking as if it would crumble at any moment. Yet in the next second, the blood dragon began to shrink continuously, as if a black hole had appeared at its center, twisting and vanishing toward a specific point. The dragon's form dissipated, replaced by King, whose entire body was wreathed in burning crimson energy. He didn't plan to continue using the blood dragon. While such attack effects were cool, they were better suited as area of effect skills for clearing a field. With King's current attributes, concentrating all that immense power into his own body was the strongest way to fight. The god also noticed King's intention, and the starry sky on his face trembled imperceptibly. Trying to break through a surface with a single point, then so be it. The god looked up, and the deep starry sky on his face actually transformed into King's likeness. Similarly violent and powerful energy erupted from his body, forming a red pillar of light that seemed to connect the heavens and the earth in this starry sky. Indeed, the god had copied King's state. His attributes had now reached the same standard as King's, making them equal in terms of stats. Seeing this, King didn't pause for a moment. He stepped through the cracking void and threw a heavy punch concentrated with boundless energy. Wearing King's face, the god channeled the vast, ocean-like energy within his body to meet the attack head-on. Boom! 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 This part of the starry sky had turned into an ocean of energy, and even the space here was constantly shattering due to the extremely compressed energy. Without air resistance, the two crimson streaks of light darted and collided repeatedly in the vast universe. Each impact set off a silent explosion in the starry sky. The god's fist struck out, carrying an attack comparable to the energy of a nuclear explosion, landing squarely on King's face as the heavens and earth roared. King remained unmoved and countered with a punch of equal force, striking the god's head and sending him flying back uncontrollably. This guy got stronger again. The god was astonished. He had clearly copied King's state, but in the exchange just now, he could sense that King's stats had surpassed him once more. Is it that ability to adapt to all things? What a disgusting skill. As a high-dimensional being with vast knowledge, the god immediately realized the reason. In his current state, his attack power was likely being gradually adapted to by King, and would sooner or later result in reduced damage or even total immunity. Furthermore, to adapt to these attacks, King's body was continuously evolving and becoming stronger. You have ways to get stronger, but do you think I don't? The god placed his palm on his face, wiping away the previously copied visage. He then copied the now stronger King, and his aura rose even further. Both sides were growing stronger in sync. King grew stronger by constantly adapting to the god's power, while the god could continuously copy King. It was as if both were stepping on their own feet to spiral upward into the heavens. Thus, for a time, neither could gain the upper hand. After all, they shared the same beauty in their stats. As soon as one's stats increased, the others would immediately catch up. King landed another punch on the god's body. The terrifying impact sent the god tumbling through the void, unable to stop himself for a moment. His body flew back like a cannonball, crashing straight into a desolate planet not far away. This planet was planetary in scale, but due to its harsh environment, it had not yet birthed any life. The streak of light, radiating chaotic colors and crimson energy, slammed violently into the surface, leaving a massive crater thousands of meters in diameter. Amidst the sky-filling dust, the god flew out of the crater. He looked at his cracked black and gold armor and couldn't help but clench his fists. What a troublesome guy. All illegal transmigrators should just go die. The god secretly sensed trouble. Although he could continuously copy King's attributes to stay on the same level, there was a rule involved. King had to get stronger first before he could copy him. Before King became more powerful, he couldn't copy other attributes. At their level, even a time difference of 0.01 seconds could lead to different outcomes. For instance, if King became stronger for 0.1 seconds, and the god chose to copy King's attributes 0.1 seconds later, then within those 0.1 seconds, the god would take several heavy punches and suffer more damage. While the god was thinking, another crimson streak of light descended from the sky as King chose to press his advantage. The god also lunged forward. The two collided fiercely on the planet's surface, the surrounding ground uplifted by a terrifying force, turning into a boundless wave of rubble that spread toward the horizon. A quarter of the planet's surface was annihilated in this collision. The uplifted rubble was then forcibly pulled back by gravity. The planetary surface began to shake continuously, as if it would break apart in the next second. King and the god became entangled once more. Under their non-stop attacks, the entire planet's surface had become shattered beyond recognition. The sky was swirled with persistent dust, and bright red magma gushed from the core, a truly apocalyptic scene. Chapter 157, Chapter 158, It seems your adaptation ability has reached its limit. 1027 words. Chapter 158, It seems your adaptation ability has reached its limit. Bang! Bang! Bang bang bang! Violent explosions continuously erupted across the planet's surface, causing the heavens and earth to change color as the planet crumbled. Amidst the sky full of shattered rocks, two streaks of light clashed continuously. Their punches and kicks, though simple and unadorned, displayed the pinnacle of power. At their current level, so-called techniques had lost much of their meaning. Whoever had the higher numerical advantage could crush their opponent. King's fist once again smashed toward the god, a roaring boom echoing through the air. The god had no intention of dodging, as it was impossible anyway. Instead, he simply raised his fist to meet the attack head-on. Their energy and fists collided simultaneously. A seething, violent wave of energy erupted from the point of impact, instantly turning the ground beneath them into dust and creating a bottomless black void. King and the god's fists remained locked for less than 0.1 seconds before the god's fist shattered into a mist of blood in the next instant. King's strength had actually increased yet again. He had adapted to some extent to the god's power and defense, and this adaptation was still improving. Looking at his shattered fist, the god realized that King's strength had grown once more, and this time the increase was significant. To avoid being numerically overwhelmed, the god once again copied King's strength and re-engaged in battle. Amidst the continuous clashes, King noticed with some surprise that the minor injuries he sustained were healing much slower than before. Upon closer inspection, he saw chaotic, multicolored hues swirling around the surface of his wounds. Is this the god's power? What a troublesome guy. For King, this was the first time he had encountered such a formidable opponent as this god. Compared to his previous fight with Boros, this god was undoubtedly more frustrating to deal with. Not only were his injuries unable to heal immediately, but he also couldn't enjoy the thrill of overwhelming numerical superiority. Even if he could continuously grow stronger through adaptation, the god would keep copying his power, always maintaining the same numerical level. In that case, King thought of a brilliant idea, a faint smile unconsciously curling at the corner of his mouth. Their battle continued, and the desolate planet had long since become a wasteland. Magma continuously erupted from the surface, and the ground trembled violently, clearly on the verge of shattering. Suddenly, the god noticed something odd about King. His strength. Why wasn't it increasing anymore? In the earlier stages of the fight, King's strength had increased almost every few seconds. But now, after more than 10 seconds of combat, King's strength hadn't grown again. Their numerical levels had stabilized at the same line. Abruptly, the god sensed a possibility. Could it be that this guy's adaptation ability has finally reached its limit? It should have reached its limit long ago. In the god's view, King's adaptation ability was a disgustingly heaven-defying power. Not only did it allow him to grow so much stronger in such a short time, but it also gave him the ability to almost ignore seals. Such an ability to adapt to everything should have an upper limit. After all, if a power was too heaven-defying and had no cap, what difference would there be from cheating? It now seemed that King's adaptation ability had indeed reached its limit. He likely couldn't adapt to my attacks again in a short time. Thinking this, the god also conceived a brilliant idea. In that case, both combatants harbored their own schemes, yet outwardly they appeared as if they wanted nothing more than to beat each other to death, seemingly just enjoying the pure thrill of battle. The moment King's fist grazed the god's head, the god, who had been waiting for this opportunity, finally seized the opening. He took a step forward, chaotic light bursting from his right palm, then fired a divine power-charged energy blast directly at King's face. Boom, boom, boom. King narrowly dodged it. Though part of his body was grazed, he was largely unharmed, as the thick energy armor on his surface blocked the residual energy waves. Behind him, the energy blast released by the god continued unabated, piercing through the surface and plunging into the planet's core. The energy blast exploded within the core, becoming the final straw that broke the camel's back. The planet's internal energy began to rapidly collapse. It wouldn't be long before it reached its ultimate sublimation, exploding violently and turning into cosmic dust. Without hesitation, the god shot toward the sky, his form transforming into a streak of light that soared into the clouds, rapidly distancing himself from the planet. Even at his level, being directly hit by a planet's explosion, while not fatal, would certainly cause significant damage. King, of course, thought of this as well. However, just as he was about to fly out of the atmosphere, hundreds of chains wrapped in chaotic hues suddenly shot out from the already shattered ground behind him at incredible speed. The chains were so fast that even King couldn't shake them off instantly. He was yanked back forcefully. He looked up at the sky. The god, now floating in the starry expanse, appeared somewhat hunched, as if drained by something, his entire body weakened. The god spread his arms, standing high above the soon-to-explode planet like a merciless creator. His stargazing face slowly lowered. Looking at King, firmly bound to the surface by countless chains, the god mocked. "It seems your adaptation ability has reached its limit. You probably can't adapt to these chains in a short time either. This is something I released by burning my life origin and combining it with this planet's internal energy. Even you would need dozens of seconds to break free. So, now guess, how many seconds until this planet explodes?" The god extended 3 fingers, then curled them one by one. 3, 2, 1. Boom, boom, boom. The planet before them exploded violently, erupting in a brilliant flash of light as savage shockwaves shook the surrounding void. Chapter 158, Chapter 159, Mahoraga Pro Max. 956 words. Chapter 159, Mahoraga Pro Max. The god stood tall in the void, spreading his arms to revel in the violent energy unleashed by the planet's explosion. This was a firework that bloomed every moment in the universe, the most beautiful firework, the most dazzling spectacle in this dark, lonely starry sky. A powerful divine sense swept over the planet ahead. Although the scan was somewhat disrupted by the aftermath of the explosion, the god could roughly sense that all life had vanished from the epicenter. Finally blown to bits. What a tenacious fellow. Since gaining consciousness, this was the first time the god had encountered such a formidable opponent. The blast squad could only cause him minor trouble at best, like annoying little bugs. But King was different. He had directly disrupted the god's plans and even faced him head-on in battle. Although King had now perished by the god's hand, he had earned the god's recognition. After all, this guy was the only human, within the realm of lower beings, who could still fight him face to face. What a thrilling fight. Perhaps I'll never forget you, King. Just as the god sighed with emotion, a voice suddenly echoed from behind him, one that felt eerily familiar to his very soul. Is that so? What a pity. I'm afraid I'll forget you soon enough because you're too weak. Hearing this, The god felt his hair stand on end. In a flash, he teleported dozens of kilometers away. He whipped his head around to see King standing behind him, feeling nothing but disbelief. "Bro, you're not dead." The god found it utterly absurd. How could anyone withstand a planet's explosion head-on, especially when their adaptation ability had already been nullified? It was crucial to note that the chains the god had unleashed earlier weren't just for restraint, they also gathered energy, channeling most of the planet's explosive force directly onto King. Yet now, it seemed this guy was completely unscathed. What a joke. What? Surprised I didn't get blown up by the planet. King advanced step by step toward the god, each stride covering thousands of meters in an instant, each step causing the starry sky to tremble. The thunderous King engine, amplified by the medium of energy, erupted continuously in the starry sky, resonating endlessly with heaven and earth. Thump, thump, thump. With every step King took forward, the god instinctively retreated one step. For the first time, fear crept into his heart. Staring at the unharmed King, he roared in disbelief. Impossible, impossible. Even at our level, how could anyone take the brunt of a planet's explosion and come out unscathed? The planet's explosion had been triggered by the god's energy cannon, so the blast energy contained his power to hinder wound recovery. If King had been severely injured by the explosion and rapidly healed, that would clearly be impossible. Hearing the god's incredulous roar, King continued his advance. His majestic, domineering face remained calm as water, yet radiated an imperial pressure. Curious why I wasn't blown up? Simple, I adapted to the entire planet. The planet's explosion naturally ceased to be a threat to me. What the hell? The god was utterly dumbfounded. Are you even listening to what you're saying? What do you mean by adapted to the entire planet? His life origin burning strike had yielded no results, and now the other party, with a cold face, spouted such heaven-defying nonsense. The god couldn't take it anymore. He charged forward, vanishing in a flash and reappearing in front of King in the blink of an eye. His fist, wrapped in chaotic hues, slammed hard toward King's face. Facing this powerful blow, King didn't even flinch to dodge. Boom! The god's fist landed squarely on King's face. Violent energy shockwaves scattered in all directions, shattering the space around them in an instant. Yet, even though his attack had hit its mark, the god felt only boundless shock and erupting terror. It felt as if his fist had struck a towering divine mountain, utterly incapable of inflicting any harm. Sure enough, King brushed aside the god's fist, his face showing not a single scratch. Then, he countered with a punch of his own. The god had no time to block, taking a heavy blow to the chest. Amidst a cacophony of crisp bone-cracking sounds, the god's ribs shattered completely. The black gold armor on his chest disintegrated into a shower of fragments. He was sent flying like a meteor, tumbling uncontrollably through cosmic space due to the immense impact, only barely stabilizing after a long roll. Seeing King closing in again, the god dared not hesitate. He immediately placed his hand on the starry face spread across the sky, ready to copy King's data. But this time, King's face didn't appear on the starry visage as it had before. The slowly rotating starry sky suddenly froze, as if glitching, utterly unable to materialize the copied face. What's going on? Why is this happening? The god was baffled. During their earlier fight, he had clearly sensed that King's adaptation ability had been nullified. So why had King suddenly adapted to the entire planet? What kind of bizarre principle was this? As if sensing the god's astonishment, King charged forward, beating the underdog while kindly explaining. Every time I fought you on that planet's surface, I intentionally let debris hit me or slammed into the ground. This way, the planet's materials continuously collided with me, causing imperceptible damage and triggering my adaptation ability. After colliding with debris 1,000 times, I adapted to all materials on that planet. Any attack originating from it can no longer harm me. Hearing King's explanation, the god completely lost it. Are you even speaking human language? Chapter 159, Chapter 160, Extreme Crisis. 965 words. Chapter 160, Extreme Crisis. It was only at this moment that God realized that his earlier assumption about King's adaptability failing was, in fact, King's misdirection. King deliberately suppressed his adaptability, leading God to misjudge, and then unleashed a massive attack. The two sides clashed again, but this time, the battle situation was completely different from before. God appeared in front of King, his fists turning into a blur of after-images, unleashing nearly 1,000 punches in an instant. Each punch was powerful enough to shatter a planet's surface. This series of continuous attacks would likely blow up a planet. However, facing these powerful fists, King didn't even flinch, nor did he adopt any defensive stance, allowing God to attack. After being hit thousands of times, God grew increasingly terrified. Why can't my attacks hurt him? Why do all my attacks seem to miss? This feeling was very strange to God. The sensation of hitting him wasn't like being defended against, it was more like not hitting him at all, as if the power contained in his fists was completely nullified. Wait, nullified? God suddenly realized something, and his scalp tingled. Could it be that my attacks have been nullified by him? God didn't even have time to think, as King had already launched his attack, a fist compressed with extreme energy slamming into God's face. Boom! God was sent flying backward like a spinning top, and before he could stabilize himself, King instantly appeared beside him again. Immediately, a storm of heavy punches rained down, causing cracks to constantly appear on the black golden armor on God's body, and his star-filled face seemed to show signs of being blown apart. God tried to counterattack, but his attacks landed on King without causing any ripples, instead giving King an opportunity to strike even harder. Two crimson streaks of light continuously weaved through the void, but God could never shake off King's pursuit, constantly being beaten into a daze by fast and powerful fists, with the damage to his body becoming increasingly severe. Just as a fist once again struck towards his face, God, in desperation, could only cross his arms to block, and a shield formed by chaotic colors condensed at the position of his two arms. Energy collided head-on with the chaotic colors. God's divine ability shield couldn't even last 0.1 seconds before being shattered on the spot, and the fist slammed heavily onto that star-filled face. Ooh! God grunted and flew backward again. After finally stabilizing himself with the help of the void, he floated unsteadily in the air, suddenly seeing sparkling star fragments falling from his vision. What is this? God subconsciously touched his face, but his fingers felt a warm sensation. Upon closer inspection, his hand also felt the presence of hair and sticky crimson blood. King once again arrived before God, but this time he was not in a hurry to act, instead observing him with interest. Oh! Have you been awakened? How much longer will you be controlled by this guy, Garu? From King's perspective, at this moment, God's star-filled face had been half-shattered by those heavy punches aimed at his face, and one of Garu's eyes had reappeared. What? An alarm blared in God's heart, and a furious roar instantly echoed in his mind. Get out of here, you bastard! What are you, to dare occupy this Lord's body? God sank his consciousness into his mind and saw the soul that had made the sound. Although this human soul was weak, it was incredibly compatible with the surrounding conscious mind. God only felt a huge repulsive force, and for a moment, he couldn't maintain control of his body. This is bad, this guy has actually awakened. Noticing Garu's awakening, God immediately felt a sense of dread. Although Garu's soul, as the human, was extremely weak and insignificant, he was merely performing possession. This body's mind was the main domain of the other party's soul. With the home field advantage, although he wouldn't be driven out, his combat power would decrease due to the chaos caused by the original soul in the mind. Especially in such a critical situation, the king in front of him was already an enormous problem, and now Garu was causing trouble in his mind. This is bad. The biggest problem now is that King is constantly getting stronger due to his adaptability, but God cannot replicate King's attributes, so the numerical gap between them will only grow larger. But one thing is crucial, this is no longer a matter of numerical values. His attacks landing on the opponent caused no damage at all, which is undoubtedly some kind of mechanism. Combining this with King's earlier statement about adapting to the existence of an entire planet, God was first stunned, then came to a conclusion that seemed absurd. This guy, couldn't he have already adapted to my existence as a person? If that were the case, it would make sense. King had already adapted to him, so any of his attacks would be completely nullified for the opponent. This is literally like cheating. Realizing this, God immediately felt incredibly frustrated. He had actually suffered such a huge loss at the hands of a low-dimensional being. Damn it! God was now plagued by internal and external troubles. Externally, King, a formidable enemy, was eyeing him menacingly, and internally, the awakened Garu's soul was constantly causing trouble, attempting to reclaim the body. Moreover, his most powerful subordinate, Sunsperm, had also become the pet of that bald man who transcended rules, and he couldn't even retrieve 30% of the opponent's divine power, further weakening his strength. At this moment, even he, who prided himself on being a higher being, felt an extreme crisis. Chuckle I'm in danger. Chapter 160, Chapter 161, A Giant Star Similar to the Sun. 1,323 words. Chapter 161, A Giant Star Similar to the Sun. There was so much Chinese in this chapter that my brain short-circuited, and no, I did not remove the Chinese. If I had to suffer, you're all suffering with me. Wahahaha, smiling face with horns. Bang, bang, bang. The god was knocked askew, constantly rolling in the starry sky, yet before he could even stop his momentum, he was sent flying again. King's punches became increasingly fierce, so fierce that even the god had no qualification to parry, only able to remain in a state of passive beating. And in the god's mind, an arrogant voice incessantly clamored. Aren't you so awesome? Don't you like to take possession of this daddy's body? Why are you being beaten like a stray dog now? Speak, you trash. Garu wantonly mocked the god. As the owner of the body, now that his consciousness had awakened, he could naturally see the outside scene. Moreover, he was watching it from an even more satisfying third-person perspective. Watching the god being beaten senseless by King, who was like a god descending to earth, even though it was his own body being beaten, Garu still felt incredibly exhilarated. Compared to King, who was currently pummeling his body outside, Garu still hated this god who had inexplicably taken possession of him even more. Harder. This is what I want to see, Y.A. King. Don't make this daddy look down on you, hurry up and beat this idiot to death. Shut up. The god was already dazed from King's punches, and Garu's strange shouts kept coming from his ears, making him furious and ashamed. You are just a weak and lowly creature, what right do you have to bark in front of me? In the mental space. The god, whose body was composed of twisted lines, roared furiously at the white-haired young man in front of him, yet the white-haired young man always maintained an indifferent attitude. Garu showed great disdain for the god's anger, his tone full of mockery. So what? I'm a stray dog, but aren't you also being beaten like a dog by the strongest man on earth, King, only able to rage impotently here? Aren't you the scum of dogs? Upon hearing this, the god's anger intensified. He raised his hand without hesitation, and as the divine power surged in, the entire consciousness space began to vibrate continuously. The god even gave up control of the external body, letting King wantonly pummel it, only using instinct to condense a shield. The reason he went to this extent was not because he was infuriated by Garu's words, but because he had deeper considerations. The biggest problem at hand was both internal and external troubles. Outside, there was the strong enemy King constantly attacking, and inside, Garu's soul, that troublemaker, was continuously trying to regain control of the body. If King's trouble can't be solved, can't I solve yours, Garu? Countless divine power transformed into sharp spikes, overwhelming Garu. Garu was greatly surprised, seemingly not expecting the god to launch such a powerful attack so decisively. He instinctively made a fighting stance, his hands tracing blue marks in the void. Water stream rock smashing fist. Although it was only a thought now, the familiarity with water stream rock smashing fist was already deeply etched into Garu's soul, almost instinctively used. This was ultimately Garu's home ground. Even the god's divine power lost most of its effect in this soul space, being repelled one by Garu's water stream rock smashing fist. In the dark soul space, a colossal humanoid creature with twisted lines hung high in the sky, thousands of spikes raining down like drops. Below, the white-haired young man, as tiny as an ant, faced the storm-like attacks, only able to continuously block with his two fists. Perceiving that such an attack seemed unable to defeat Garou, the god waved his hand again, and a tsunami-like sound of water echoed from the depths of the soul space. The next second, a vast wave composed of chaotic colors swept over, attacking Garou like a roaring dragon. Seeing this scene, Garou almost cursed. This is too fierce. The wave swept over, and Garou's body became riddled with holes, with pale bones visible in several places. But even so, he still didn't fall, instead striking the water stream rock-smashing fist stance again, his upward-slanted wolf eyes full of tenacity. Come on. This daddy won't lose to a lowlife like you. The god was shocked. This guy, his soul will is actually so firm and tenacious, an ordinary soul should have shattered in the energy tide just now. Wave after wave of tsunamis swept over, and Garou was like a reef standing in the waves, constantly enduring the pounding of the great waves, yet never falling. Later, Garou's entire body had almost turned into pale bones, and he was completely on his last breath, but his eyes remained firm. Because it was a soul manifestation, even such fatal injuries would not kill Garou. Only when his will was completely crushed and his soul shattered into light particles would he die. Seeing that Garou still wouldn't die, the god became furious. Why aren't you dead yet? Garou manipulated his arms, which had turned into white bones, slowly bending them, striking the water stream rock-smashing fist stance again. This daddy said, a lowlife like you, a rat who only dares to hide in the dark, is not worthy of defeating me. He realized that if he continued to defend like this, no matter how tough his soul was, he was destined to be shattered. To live, to achieve his absolute evil, to defeat all heroes, and to become a true monster. A white-haired figure suddenly flashed through Garou's mind, and the will to live burned fiercely within him. To pass on the water stream rock-smashing fist, to be able to personally prove to the old man one day that this daddy is right. Water stream rock-smashing fist was unleashed, and Garou's figure advanced rapidly like a ghost, roaring as he charged in front of the god. Facing Garou's berserk attack, the god was momentarily disinclined to parry, simply letting the opponent furiously strike the shield formed by divine power. And he himself led his consciousness back to reality, choosing not to continue targeting Garou, but to return to deal with King. No other reason, because the body in reality was about to be beaten to death. As soon as he returned to this body, the god couldn't help but spit out blood, and scarlet blood began to flow from all 7 orifices. He looked down and saw that his body was already riddled with holes, the originally hideous and domineering black gold armor long since shattered beyond recognition, with deep, sunken fist marks everywhere. Damn it! The god hadn't even had time to continue thinking when a fist, condensed with dense energy, heavily smashed into his face. Boom! 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 The void in front of him instantly shattered, the god's head was twisted from the impact, and a crisp cracking sound came from his neck. He uncontrollably flew backward again, and seeing the light behind him getting closer, his pupils involuntarily constricted. Is that the sun? No, this is a star, similar to the sun, continuously emitting light and heat. The god hadn't expected that in the brief time he spent dealing with Garou in the consciousness space, King had actually brought him to such a place. Feeling an incredibly scorching aura coming from behind him, the god grabbed at the surrounding space, trying to stabilize himself. However, in the very next moment, a scarlet stream of light arrived instantly. King grabbed the god's head and charged forward at high speed. In this vast and lonely starry sky, the 2 streams of light crashed into a giant star similar to the sun. Chapter 161, Chapter 162, Don't worry, you won't die. 746 words. Chapter 162, Don't worry, you won't die. The moment they entered, God felt his skin melting as an intensely scorching temperature engulfed them both. This was the outermost layer of the star, and also the area with the highest temperature second only to the core, reaching up to 100,000 degrees Celsius. God punched King, trying to make him let go. If we just rush into the core like this, the consequences for me will be unimaginable. King has the ability to adapt, he'll definitely be able to adapt to this extremely high temperature in a very short time, but I can't. However, God's attack landed on King as if it were a tickle, unable to cause him any harm. Damn it. I forgot I was adapted to. This ability is too disgusting. Realizing that his punches still couldn't cause any harm, God finally remembered that his entire existence had already been adapted to by King, making it impossible to harm him. And in terms of brute force, God also couldn't break free from King's grip, only to be forcibly pressed forward by him. During the charge, King didn't forget to wildly punch God with his other hand, each punch carrying power beyond nuclear explosion levels. God was quickly disoriented by a few punches, and the extreme temperature had already started to make white smoke rise from his body. Coupled with King's heavy blows, his current situation was incredibly passive. Pop! With a crisp sound, the blazing light around them suddenly changed, becoming a pure white. Ah. God finally let out a scream, as the surrounding temperature instantly soared to his breaking point. At this moment, the temperature around them had reached over 500,000 degrees Celsius, and even space itself was distorted. Let alone God, even King's skin began to show signs of melting, but it would recover instantly after a flash of green light. The two of them continued to entangle in the deepest part of the star, each collision briefly dispersing the surrounding temperature, creating a vacuum. After hundreds of continuous collisions, King's skin had completely stopped melting. He had successfully adapted to the temperature in the deepest part of this star. In contrast, God's entire armor had been shattered, and his body was continuously melting into blood. If it weren't for the powerful vitality of God's possession and his continuous recovery ability, he would have already died. This is really bad. The Garou in his mind kept clamoring, and the real-world crisis was immense. God was overwhelmed. Finally, after another punch, God's figure was sent flying backward, all his armor falling off. The raging high temperature engulfed his body, which was like the last straw that broke the camel's back. God's entire body began to burn fiercely. Watching God constantly screaming in the consciousness space, Garou's eyes narrowed, realizing his chance had finally come. After a fierce struggle, the weakened God surprisingly failed to regain control of his body, and Garou successfully took back his own body. King, who was about to punch, froze. Looking at God, whose eyes and demeanor were completely different, he asked with a hint of confusion. Garou? God, or rather, Garou, nodded. He felt the burning pain from his body, grimacing, but still forced a smile. King, although I couldn't defeat you, which makes me feel very annoyed, I dislike even more someone taking my body to do such genocidal, beastly things. Kill me, and that way, the monster occupying my body will also be eliminated, and it should no longer be able to invade this world. Seriously, I still have many regrets. I haven't even had the chance to become absolute evil, and I'm about to kick the bucket. Garou spread his arms, a look of relief on his face, fully exposing his body to King's iron fist. He indeed wanted to live, wanted to personally end the era of heroes, and become the absolute evil of monsters, the savior of monsters. But he couldn't allow the monster inside him to return to Earth, otherwise, the old man would be in danger. Forget it, absolute evil or whatever, I'll be that in my next life. For this life, I'll be a great hero who saves the world. Just then, King suddenly smiled, patting Garou's shoulder with a hint of teasing in his tone. A great hero who wants to become absolute evil, you can rest assured about that. You won't die, I'm still here. Chapter 162, Chapter 163, I'm freaking here. 1164 words. Chapter 163, I'm freaking here. As he spoke, King threw a heavy punch into Garou's abdomen. Garou's eyes bulged out. He clearly hadn't expected King, who had just promised him he would be fine, to give him such a vicious punch in the next second. You! Before Garou could spit out his second word, King's fists followed in quick succession, accompanied by his comforting voice. Don't worry, this is a necessary step. If one looked closely, they would see that besides being wrapped in energy as thick as a mountain, King's fists also seemed to flicker with a faint white light. And every time his fist struck Garou's body, that flickering white light would vaguely split off a portion and enter his frame. Indeed, this was another passive skill King had obtained, Indestructible Soul. This was originally a passive skill intended to work with ultraspeed regeneration, to take one's survival capabilities to the next level, but after several experiments, King had discovered another use for it. He could allow his soul to autonomously choose between soul emergence or returning to his body. Moreover, due to the nature of the passive skill, the soul could be very well protected. And now, what King needed to do was transfer his soul into Garu's body to eliminate the god entrenched within him from a spiritual level. Garu felt as though he were a piece of iron being hammered relentlessly by a forge hammer, blow after blow falling upon him, being beaten within an inch of his life. After a continuous barrage of hundreds of punches, Garu himself was nearly beaten into the afterlife, finally creating a massive gap in the mental space. With a thought from King, his pale white soul instantly emerged from his body and poured entirely into Garu's. What met his eyes was a patch of pitch black, followed by a faint daylight. King finally saw Garu's current mental space and understood exactly what had been happening in the mind of this arrogant youth during the battle. A twisted and grotesque giant humanoid creature floated in the sky, while below was a tiny human who had already turned into pale white bones. Heaven and earth seemed to be in an inverted state, with endless divine power turning into waves that constantly crashed against the human skeleton below. Garu's will had been fighting frantically within the mental space. Even when the god brought forth a sky full of divine power, his unyielding will could not be immediately crushed. The two were currently fighting desperately for control of the body. The god, who had been displaced, was constantly trying to reclaim the body by attacking Garu's soul. King's sudden appearance broke the somewhat stalemated atmosphere. The god turned its head in disbelief, looking at King who had appeared in someone else's soul world, feeling as if its brain had stalled. Wait. Do both of you know this move? The last time it saw this scene was when it was preparing to reclaim the sun's sperm divine power, and that damn bald guy had inexplicably rushed in. And now you're here too. The god was on high alert, but then it reconsidered. Right now, King was only in soul form, and this guy's greatest strength lay in his incredibly thick energy and powerful physical body stats. Now that this guy was in a soul state, none of those stats could be used. Wouldn't that mean he was at its mercy? Thinking of this, the god suddenly felt victory was within its grasp. The frustration and anger from being beaten before could finally be vented, and it couldn't help but mock him. I really didn't expect that you, as the strongest man on earth, would be foolish enough to choose to abandon your strongest physical body to fight me, a higher dimensional being, in a soul state. Without a doubt, this is the stupidest thing you've ever done, King. You have already lost any possibility of defeating me. I control most of this soul space. This ant named Garu has already lost control over his own spiritual world. This place is easy to enter but impossible to leave. You are destined to be terminated here. As its voice fell, the god immediately withdrew all the divine power it had been using against Garu and then unleashed a frantic output toward King. Spikes of divine power swept down like a storm, while surging waves of chaotic colors erupted across the sky, and pillars of divine power formed from chaotic colors shot out from all directions. Facing the various attacks, King merely snorted. Burning energy bloomed on his soul body, and his powerful aura instantly crushed the incoming divine power into powder. In the next second, taking advantage of the god's state of shock, King flashed forward, appearing directly in front of the god and throwing a punch in his soul state. Boom! In an instant, the world changed color as a howling soul wind vibrated through the spiritual world. The god was sent reeling by this punch, its massive frame crashing heavily into the ground. It wasn't over yet. King flew forward again, stepping directly onto the god's body. He then leaned down, his fists punching through the void in a blur, creating a series of explosive booms. Beating a dog while it's down, this was what he was best at. Finding that it had no ability to counter even on the soul level, the god suddenly broke down. Are you freaking omnipotent or something? It never imagined that King could release the energy belonging to a physical body while in an ethereal soul state. You're freaking cheating. Noticing that the attacks harming his soul had stopped, Garu's body, which had been reduced to bone, regrew flesh and blood at a speed visible to the naked eye. In an instant, he was completely restored. This was a soul body after all. Changes in form were illusory, and only the origin of the soul body was real. Furthermore, this was his spiritual world, his home turf. Recovering was as easy as could be. Seeing that tall, blonde figure pinning the massive, twisted humanoid creature to the ground and beating it senseless, Garou was stunned for a moment before a savage smile appeared on his face. Although it was King who had interrupted his monster plan, not only crushing his self-esteem but also conveniently sending him to prison. It was King, known as the strongest man on Earth, who had made his long-planned hero hunting plan go down the drain, even forcing him to share a prison with that big perverted freak and defeating him in an extremely contemptuous manner. This was something the highly prideful Garou could not tolerate. But I really hate that high and mighty god. Garou also charged forward, manipulating his water-stream rock-smashing fist, his eyes flashing with a golden light of excitement. Hey! King, don't kill that bastard yet. Save a few punches for me. I'm freaking here. Chapter 163, Chapter 164, How did he turn into charcoal? 1057 words. Chapter 164, How did he turn into charcoal? Aura 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 aura. Two figures pinned the massive, distorted humanoid creature down and pummeled it, their fists moving so fast they left after images. Garou remembered the pain of being tortured by divine power earlier, as well as the resentment and anger of being possessed. His fists grew more powerful with every swing. King's eyes were also filled with rage. He couldn't help but recall the time he was suppressed, forced to watch helplessly as God sent his subordinates to invade Earth, while he himself was powerless. At the thought of this, the fire of anger in his heart burned even brighter. King's fists also struck faster and faster, each punch causing God's body to cave in. King's attacks were heavy and powerful, each strike enough to shave away God's soul origin, making him increasingly weak. Although Garou's attacks were very weak, this soul world was his home turf. Along with his continuous strikes and hostile desires, this world also began to constantly reject God. Being pinned to the ground and beaten, God was also incredibly annoyed, but he could not stand up. Because the combined power of the two was too great, and in his current state of mere mental will, he was simply unable to resist. Damn it, these damned human bugs, damn it. The humiliation in his heart made God want to roar, but before he could even make a sound, he took another set of combination punches to the face. One possessed soul power that was already stronger than his, while the other was the true master of this space. As a weak god who had invaded from a higher dimension, he had no right to resist at all. Under the duo's group beating, God's figure became increasingly ethereal, a sign that his soul power was weakening. If I let the two of them keep hitting me like this, I'm afraid I'll be in trouble. Even as a higher dimensional being, although God wouldn't die even if his soul shattered in this lower dimensional world, it would still severely deplete his vitality. One must know that he wasn't the only being in the higher dimension. If he truly suffered irreparable damage, he would easily be devoured by other entities. Thinking of this, God immediately began to beat a retreat. Even though this meant thousands of years of planning would be ruined and he would completely lose the chance to invade Earth, he could only grit his teeth and give up. After all, if he didn't give up now, his soul would be beaten to bits, and then the life of his true body would be at risk. Watching the two still mounted on him and beating him frantically, God had a thought. A violent surge of chaotic-colored energy erupted from his body, causing King and Garou to temporarily stop their assault. Seizing this opportunity, God finally gained time to speak. His cold and grand voice echoed continuously throughout the soul space. So what if you have the upper hand? I am God, a being from a higher dimension than yours. No matter how arrogant you are in this low-level world, you will ultimately never be able to reach my level. As he spoke, God's gaze fell upon King, his tone carrying a hint of provocation, as if certain that King would definitely fail this time. I have to admit, as a human from a lower dimensional world, you are truly impressive. Even if you are a stowaway, it doesn't change the fact of your strength. But so what? Whether it's you or that bald head who transcends the rules, you are ultimately inferior beings. I will be watching you forever from the higher dimensional world. Ha 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 ha. Hearing these words from God, King immediately realized that this guy wanted to flee. But scanning the means he currently possessed, he discovered with some helplessness that he really didn't seem to have any way to keep God here. Wait, there's still this move. While God was still spouting threats, King silently split off strand after strand of his own soul, integrating them all into God's soul body. This way, As long as there was still a connection between their souls, he could hunt God down in the higher dimensional world. As for how to get there, he'd have to ask the magical bald guy. As long as Saitama wanted to go, there was nothing he couldn't do. It was all about the I reckon power. Is that so? King spoke, the speed of his fists swinging faster and faster. No matter where you hide, Saitama and I will find you and beat you until you're on your knees. Remember those words. God sneered, his soul body having become extremely ethereal, turning into a sky full of light spots that slowly dissipated. Then I shall look forward to your arrival. I only hope you can cross the dimensions, you ridiculous lot. The next second, God completely dissipated. The remaining divine power flooded into the void and vanished, all returning to the higher dimensional world. Having dealt with God, King did not remain in Garu's mental world any longer, but returned to reality. He had to hurry. Before the divine power on Garu completely dissipated, he needed to move the guy out of the star as quickly as possible. Without divine power, Garu would surely return to his previous weakling state. If the current Garu were exposed to a 500,000 degrees Celsius environment, he would likely be vaporized instantly. Sure enough, after losing the divine power, Garu's physical strength began to regress continuously, and he became dying in an instant. The reason he didn't die on the spot was thanks to the divine power of God that had not yet fully dissipated. Under such violent temperatures, besides beings of King's level who could survive, any other weak creature entering would only result in being instantly vaporized. King grabbed the half-dead Garu, and a massive amount of energy flooded in, wrapping around his entire body. A scarlet stream of light shot out in a straight line, moving away from the heat of the distorted space. He looked down at the charcoal-like lump inside the energy shield, which no longer resembled a human, and couldn't help but complain. How did he turn into a piece of charcoal? Chapter 164, Chapter 165, Will you continue to uphold your absolute evil? 1184 words. Chapter 165, Will you continue to uphold your absolute evil? At this moment, Garu had been burned beyond recognition, his entire body turned into a large lump of charcoal, looking as if it were coated with a layer of black skin. Can you still talk? Hey! King shook him a couple of times and found that although Garu didn't respond, he was still alive. This kid is really tenacious. Even King couldn't help but feel a sense of admiration at this moment. First, he endured a beating, then his whole body was nearly burned to charcoal, yet he still didn't die. Rather than saying he didn't die, it would be more accurate to say that this kid was basically unharmed. Although Garu looked utterly miserable now, within his body lay an immense amount of life force, seemingly hidden deep within his foundation. Unless killed with a single punch, this guy could continuously stimulate his life force and become stronger. The crimson energy from King's body slowly flowed into Garu's. Controlled by King, this energy became gentle and full of vitality, continuously repairing Garu's severely damaged body. The charcoal on his body slowly cracked, revealing Garu's smooth skin beneath the fissures. Energy could heal others. This was a result King discovered through several experiments. Ever since defeating Boros, the leader of the dark matter pirates, he had occasionally tested his various abilities. He had discovered some interesting minor uses, such as the soul invasion technique he just used, and the fact that his own energy could heal others. Perhaps because King himself possessed the talent of ultraspeed regeneration, his energy, aside from its immense destructive power, also contained abundant life force. Under the continuous healing of the energy, Garu's breathing gradually stabilized, and his yellow pupils slowly opened. Where am I? After a brief moment of confusion, Garu finally came to his senses, his eyes widening in shock as he looked at King. I'm still alive. Did we kill that damn god? King nodded. That's right, you're still alive. That god has been expelled from your body and is powerless to invade this world again. I see. Garu lowered his head in thought, only then noticing his surroundings, and he completely lost his composure. This scene is full of glittering, sparkling lights. Am I freaking in outer space? He instinctively wanted to hold his breath because, based on the little knowledge he learned in school, there's no oxygen in space. But then he realized he could breathe and noticed a layer of energy shield surrounding him, preserving some oxygen. Garu felt a wave of weakness deep within his soul and couldn't help but clench his fist. Having experienced the power of the god's body and now returning to such a weak state, the stark contrast felt incredibly strange. He shook his head and suddenly seemed to remember something, his tone tinged with uncertainty. By the way, where are we now? Is that glowing ball next to us the sun? The naive Garu thought that even if they had reached outer space, they were still within the solar system. Hearing this, King's expression also darkened slightly. To be honest, even he didn't know where that bastard god had teleported them, but one thing was certain, this was definitely not the solar system. Fortunately, he had left an energy imprint on the bald demon King Saitama and could tear through space to return by following the energy trail. In response to Garu's question, King shook his head. This is not the solar system but a region very far from Earth. If we want to return normally, it would likely take a very long time. Hearing this, Garu was immediately stunned. We're outside the solar system? How do we get back? Garu tried hard to recall the little knowledge about the universe he had learned in school. It seemed the fastest speed was the speed of light, and even light speed was considered very slow in the universe, taking about 8 minutes just to travel from the sun to Earth. And now they were in a region even farther than the solar system. Didn't that mean it would take them a very long time to return? As if sensing what Garu was about to say, King cut him off in advance. If you're wondering how to get back, don't worry. I can tear through space and reach Earth directly through space turbulence. With that, King decided not to waste any more time with Garu. He grabbed him, thrust his right hand into the void ahead. With an explosive burst of power, the space ahead was forcibly torn apart by King's strength, revealing an irregular silver-white rift. King closed his eyes, his consciousness probing the distant cosmic expanse, quickly locking onto an extremely faint energy trace. Found it. He grabbed Garu, who was protected by the energy shield, and leaped into the spatial rift. Facing the knife-like space turbulence ahead, King didn't actively defend. Instead, after weakening some of the damage, he allowed the remaining spatial cuts to continuously ravage his body. After enduring hundreds of cuts, the damage the space turbulence could inflict on King became negligible, leaving only faint white marks on his skin. This way, he could allocate more energy to protect Garu, preventing the kid from being torn to shreds by accident. The world spun around them. King could still handle it, but Garu, even with the protection of the energy shield, was already dizzy and seeing stars. After charging through the space turbulence for nearly 10 minutes, King's perception of the energy trace reached its limit. It seems we've arrived. With that thought, King threw a punch, smashing another hole in the space above. He then grabbed Garu and rushed out of the space turbulence. Looking at the azure planet before him, King floated in the void, a faint smile curling at the corner of his mouth. Finally, we're back. As for this guy, King looked down at Garu, whose face was pale and on the verge of vomiting, and asked, "Will you continue to uphold your absolute evil?" At this moment, Garu felt like a severely car-sick patient who had just stepped off a long-distance bus, his stomach churning and waves of dizziness assaulting his mind. Even so, hearing King's question, he forced himself to endure the dizziness and managed a smile. Of course, I, the Great One, will uphold absolute evil. I will defeat other heroes and make them understand that victory in this world isn't reserved only for heroes. When Garu spoke, he deliberately emphasized other heroes, excluding King, who stood before him. It wasn't just because King had saved him, preventing him from being possessed by the god. There was another, more important reason. He simply couldn't win. Garu had seen King's performance clearly in the soul space. He knew that even if he mastered the water stream rock-smashing fist to its peak, even if he evolved through countless life-and-death battles, he could never defeat this monster. After all, this was someone who could pummel a god into the ground. Chapter 165, Chapter 166, Huh? You're actually going to do it 842 words. Chapter 166, Huh? You're actually going to do it. Hearing Garu's answer, King was somewhat surprised. Huh? You're actually going to do it? He had originally just asked casually, while also seeing if he could change Garu's way of thinking. After all, Having experienced so many things and witnessed the hero's actions in protecting Earth, one would think he'd be somewhat moved. Yet you still want to keep targeting heroes and become your own absolute evil? For a moment, King didn't know whether to call this guy a purely Chunibyo teenager or simply thick-headed. After thinking for a bit, King gave his reply. Have you ever considered that wanting to become absolute evil doesn't only have to be proven by defeating heroes? If you want to prove you're superior to heroes, violence isn't the only path. There are other ways, such as joining the Hero Association and becoming one of the S-Class heroes. Huh? Garou and King stared at each other wide-eyed. Garou didn't understand his meaning for a moment. You mean, have me join the Hero Association and become a hero? Yep. Receiving King's confirmation again, Garou, his brain short-circuiting, scratched his head. This guy, what is he saying? Me, a hero? Seriously? Seeing Garou's confusion, King calmly gave an explanation. It's simple. S-Class heroes are beings who stand above heroes of other ranks. So if you surpass all the S-Class heroes and become S-Class rank 1, that's also indirectly defeating all heroes. That way, after successfully overpowering all heroes, you can then choose a monster identity, and naturally become absolute evil. What do you think? Garou was dumbfounded by this speech, but upon second thought, it actually seemed to make some sense. You don't necessarily have to use your fists to defeat all the heroes. After becoming a hero, you can surpass them with your ranking. After becoming the strongest hero as S-Class rank 1 and then transforming into a monster identity, you'd become the biggest monster. That sounds great. No, that's definitely sophistry. Garou finally reacted. He was just about to refute King's theory when he saw a fist as big as a sandbag that had unconsciously tightened. Garou. He stopped talking. With a martial artist's intuition, he could almost guarantee that if he spoke a few more words of his opinion, he'd definitely get a good beating. This wasn't the ground, it was outer space. King wouldn't even need to do anything else, just remove the energy shield on his body's surface and he'd die on the spot. Thinking that his life was in the other's hands, and that his current life was the one the other had personally saved, Garou felt as uncomfortable as if he'd eaten a big portion of something unpleasant. On one side was his ideal, on the other was the benefactor who had saved his life and prevented his possession, and refusal would probably also result in a beating. Moreover, Garou's mind flashed to that white-haired figure. Memories from back then were still vivid, as fresh in his mind as a yellowed slideshow. If I became a hero, the old man would probably be happy too. After some thought, Garou sighed and helplessly grabbed his hair. Let's be clear first. After I become the S-Class rank 1 hero, I will definitely transform into a monster identity. That's beyond doubt. Sure. King didn't pay too much attention to Garou's words. Never mind whether the other could reach S-Class rank 1, even if he could, so what? For Garou to get promoted to S-Class rank 1, he'd definitely have to engage in a lot of hero activities. After so many hero activities, his former impressions of heroes would probably change quite a bit. Furthermore, if after experiencing a lot of hero activities he still remained true to his original aspiration and wanted to transform into a monster, it would be even simpler. He could choose between King's fist and the bald demon King's fist. Hiss. Just then, King suddenly remembered something very important. It seems that Genos still hasn't registered as a hero. King finally remembered his cheap robot disciple. It seemed the other still hadn't registered as a hero with the Hero Association. Perfect. When the time comes, he'd take this guy Garou back, and the two of them could go register as S-Class heroes for fun. After experiencing a near-death state and having his body strengthened by the god's possession, Garou's strength was also much greater than when he was still in prison. If nothing unexpected happens, the current Garou could beat Puri prisoner down within 10 rounds. Good decision. Well then, time to head back to Earth. Saying this, King transformed into a crimson streak of light and flew rapidly forward, instantly plunging into the atmosphere. Garou, meanwhile, was stuck inside the energy shield, drifting back and forth behind King like a dog being hauled away in a sack. From a distance, it looked like a red crystal pendant with a little white-haired doll inside bumping around, seeing stars. Chapter 166, Chapter 167, What is this ultimate syscon? 1384 words. Chapter 167, What is this ultimate syscon? TN, I'm back, guys. Thesis defended. Partapopper, I can finally focus on updating for a while now. Well, mostly. My thesis has been defended, so I just need to do a few minor revisions. Did I already mention my thesis was defended? Oh well, my thesis is defended. Smiling face with open mouth and tightly closed eyes. Equals 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 equals. Meanwhile, on Earth, in the ruins of Zed City, Zomberman, who had already fully recovered, had found a tattered piece of cloth from somewhere to cover his rear and was squatting on the rubble, smoking a cigarette with a helpless expression. Looking at the heroes neatly lined up before him, the helplessness on his face deepened. What a mess this is. Why are they all lying so neatly? After Sunsperm's rampage, all the S-class heroes present had sustained severe injuries and had basically lost their combat capabilities. Zomberman, who had his entire upper body blown off at the very beginning, had instead become the only S-class hero still able to stand, thanks to his formidable regenerative abilities. At his feet were numerous cigarette butts that had burned down to the filter, clearly indicating he had already smoked quite a few. Zomberman scratched his head, glanced at his phone which had mysteriously lost signal, and his mouth twitched. Why is the signal so bad? The residual energy waves from several powerful entities had not yet dissipated, and on top of that, King and the God's brief clash in space had accidentally destroyed some satellites. At this moment, the ruins of Zed City were experiencing severe signal fluctuations, making it difficult to send any messages to the outside world. Zomberman had to dial dozens of times before he barely managed to contact the Hero Association and have them dispatch a large number of medical personnel for treatment. The next thing to do was wait for the medical team to arrive. Before that, he planned to check the condition of the current S-class heroes. Tatsumaki, her psychic power overloaded, was currently unconscious, with multiple external injuries and excessive blood loss. Superalloy Darkshine, this guy was even worse off. His proud, strong muscles were battered and bloody, covered in fine cracks like a glass doll. But the part that was hard to take seriously was that his shiny black skin was still radiating a bright luster, and his injuries seemed to be slowly recovering. Flashy flash, this one was beaten into unconsciousness, still unable to wake up and hanging on by a thread. Bang, after receiving a heavy blow from Sun Sperm, had also fallen into a coma, unable to fight any longer. Atomic Samurai, almost punched through by a single blow. If he hadn't used his sword to block Sun Sperm's fist in time, he might have been turned into a donut on the spot. Now he was also severely injured and down. Pig God's injuries were relatively light. He was currently replenishing his nutrients with a large amount of snacks. Although it was unclear where he pulled out so much stuff to eat, as long as he was fine, it was okay. Puri Puri Prisoner. Looking at Puri Puri Prisoner, who was clearly beaten bloody, severely injured, and unconscious, yet still had a flushed face and was curled up in a shy pose, Zomberman's face twitched, and he didn't dare look any further. As for Tank Top Master. Looking at the 1.2-meter tall muscular dwarf covered in blood and severely injured before him, Zomberman didn't know what to say. Seems like he heard a treatment method before. Recalling the earlier thought, Zomberman walked forward, grabbed the blue tank top's shoulder strap on Tank Top Master, and snapped it twice. Asterisk twang tilde asterisk. Asterisk twang tilde asterisk. Accompanied by two sounds that were clearly very elastic, the blue tank top strap, after being pulled, snapped back onto Tank Top Master's body. Something miraculous happened. The injuries on Tank Top Master's body began to heal rapidly at a visible speed. In an instant, all the damage was restored, broken bones repaired, and torn flesh regenerated. But the cost was also obvious. Looking at Tank Top Master, whose height was now only 1 meter, Zomberman silently touched his nose. It's fine, he'll understand. Probably. As for Watchdog Man. Zomberman spat out the burnt-out cigarette butt, lit another one, and through the drifting smoke, He looked at the white creature on all fours scratching its ear with its hind leg. Watchdog Man's injuries were also light, or rather, his own strength was formidable. He hadn't taken many hits during the entire battle. Even facing a terror like Sun Sperm, he could still handle it with ease. He just consumed a lot of stamina and got a bit dusty. His gaze sweeping past, Zomberman's eyes lingered on a child lying perfectly straight on the ground. Child Emperor's various mechanical devices had all been destroyed. Fortunately, he himself was unharmed. That guy covered in flames didn't seem intent on killing him either, which was a silver lining in this misfortune. When Zomberman saw a certain someone lying next to Child Emperor, he almost couldn't hold it together. Can this even be repaired? Drive Knight had been bisected at the waist. A casual strike from Sun Sperm had blown off his entire lower body. Only that huge crimson mechanical pupil kept rotating. His vocalizer flickered on and off, as if trying to say something, but no sound came out. Clearly, it was damaged too. At that moment, Zomberman frowned, seeming to have noticed something. Where's Metal Bat? He looked around and finally noticed a trail of bloodstains on the rubble, extending continuously into the distance. Oh no! Could it be that guy is pushing himself again? Zomberman's expression darkened. He knew very well that a teenager like Metal Bat, around 16 or 17, was at an age prone to stubbornness and might do things others considered foolish to prove himself. In his memory, Metal Bat's injuries seemed quite severe too. After suffering 2 heavy injuries in succession, he was probably at the end of his rope by now. Thinking this, Zomberman didn't dare delay any further. After confirming the other S-Class heroes were mostly stable, he immediately followed the trail of bloodstains to search for Metal Bat. He sprinted through the ruins, nimbly navigating between shattered rocks and broken buildings, his eyes fixed on the bloodstains on the ground. On a relatively wide, albeit broken, road, Zomberman finally found Metal Bat. At this moment, Metal Bat's silhouette looked unsteady, barely propping himself up with the already bent and slightly cracked bat, limping forward. With every step he took, blood from his face dripped down his chin onto the ground. His originally red clothes were now stained a deeper crimson. Hey, Metal Bat, your injuries are serious. Stop wandering around. I'll take you back to wait for help. Zomberman shouted as he ran, but Metal Bat never once looked back. He just kept limping forward, as if he intended to walk to the ends of the earth. Seeing that Metal Bat was completely unresponsive, Zomberman felt something was off. No matter how stubborn, he should at least turn his head upon hearing the shout, right? His condition isn't right. Zomberman rushed forward, grabbed Metal Bat's shoulder, forcing his limping gait to a halt. He circled around to face Metal Bat, about to say something, but froze on the spot. You! From Zomberman's perspective, Metal Bat's eyes had rolled back, blood was continuously flowing from his head, and all his muscles were trembling, having reached their limit, clear signs of severe injury. This. Based on his own experience of dying so many times, Zomberman could tell that Metal Bat had definitely lost consciousness. But why was this guy still moving? Just as Zomberman was utterly puzzled, he made a new discovery. Metal Bat's lips were constantly moving, as if mumbling something very quietly. Leaning in close, he could only hear extremely faint words escaping Metal Bat's lips, clearly in a state akin to sleep-talking. My sister's piano recital, absolutely can't miss it, or she'll get angry. Huh? Zomberman's eyes widened in disbelief. You mean to tell me the belief that drives you to charge forward with all your might, to keep your body moving even after losing consciousness, is not wanting to miss your sister's piano recital? What is this ultimate siscon? Chapter 167, Chapter 168, solved so quickly? 699 words. Chapter 168, solved so quickly? Metal Bat's strength suddenly surged as he shook off Zomberman, who was gripping his shoulder. His voice, which had been a dreamlike murmur, turned into a shout. I'm going to see my sister's piano competition. Caught off guard and flung away, Zomberman's pale face showed a hint of helplessness. Calm down. He raised his specially-made massive handgun and slammed the heavy but hard against the back of Metal Bat's neck. Bang! With the crisp sound of flesh colliding, Metal Bat fell to the ground, his faint breathing the only proof he was still alive. Metal Bat's body had already reached its limit. It was only his obsession with seeing his sister's piano competition that had kept him moving forward. Zomberman's strike was the straw that broke the camel's back, causing the nearly exhausted Metal Bat to collapse completely. Phew, looks like he's finally quieted down. Zomberman leaned down, hoisted the unconscious Metal Bat onto his back, and ran swiftly toward the site of the previous battle. Even carrying a person weighing over 100 pounds, his speed easily surpassed any current world record, covering 100 meters in just a few seconds. Although Zomberman's physical prowess was considered inferior among S-class heroes, that was only in comparison to those with freakishly high physical strength. In the original series, Zomberman could even bend steel bars with his bare hands. His physical strength was enough to put him at the top of the A-class heroes, and his stamina and endurance were even more terrifying. Before long, he returned to the original spot and placed Metal Bat on the far right of the group of fallen S-class heroes, wiping away non-existent sweat from his forehead. Scanning the 10 S-class heroes lying on the ground, Zomberman couldn't help but feel a sense of oddity. Why does this feel like I'm collecting Pokémon? Just then, a streak of crimson light descended from the sky, landing gently on the ground without kicking up a speck of dust. King's figure materialized from within the blood-red light. He had already exited the Gate of Death state and returned to Earth in his usual appearance. He raised his hand to deactivate the energy shield. Garou, who had been tumbling around inside the shield, was finally liberated and hit the ground with a thud. The moment he landed, Garou didn't even check his surroundings. He knelt on the ground and began to vomit uncontrollably. Bleg. It felt like being tossed in a washing machine for hundreds of cycles. Bleg. Garou looked completely drained, his stomach feeling like it was being turned upside down. Zomberman glanced at Garou, his eyes filled with suspicion. Who is this guy? He looks a bit familiar. His first instinct was to be on guard. After all, there were 10 severely injured S-class heroes here. Any sufficiently powerful being could easily kill them all right now. But since King was the one who brought him back, there was no need for concern. After all, if it hadn't been for King, they would likely have been wiped out the moment that man wreathed in flames appeared. King would not harm them. This was the only certain fact in the hearts of all the heroes present. Thinking of that being who radiated a terrifying aura, and the sun sperm who had previously wiped out the S-class heroes, Zomberman's heart tightened. King, those 2 monsters. Don't worry, they've been taken care of. One punch man and I finished them off. Solved so quickly? Zomberman had thought they had merely been driven away or temporarily escaped, considering those monsters were capable of wiping out all the S-class heroes in an instant. All things considered, from the moment King appeared to save them until he returned from the battle, only about half an hour had passed. In an instant, Zomberman's understanding of King's power was significantly updated once again. Let's not talk about that for now. Noticing that the life signs of the 10 S-class heroes lying on the ground were extremely weak, King couldn't help but frown. They're all so heavily injured. It's been so long, why hasn't the Hero Association provided medical aid yet? Chapter 168, Chapter 169, What have you done to me? 1074 words. Chapter 169, What have you done to me? Hearing King's doubt, Zomberman gave a bitter smile. Mr. King, you might not know, but the signal in this area is almost completely cut off. I only managed to contact the Hero Association after many attempts. The rescue personnel are already on their way. I see. King looked at the only 3 S-class heroes present who could still move, a hint of admiration flashing in his eyes. The S-class heroes present all possessed formidable strength, yet they were willing to fight to the death to protect humanity. This spirit was indeed worthy of respect. You've worked hard. The deep voice rang in Zomberman's ear. His action of smoking paused, and the cigarette butt in his mouth accidentally fell to the ground, scattering sparks. A wave of warmth flowed through his heart. Zomberman smiled, his red eyes looking at the strongest man on Earth before him, who had saved humanity from disaster. Mr. King, you really are a charismatic man. In Zomberman's eyes, there were truly not many good heroes like King, who possessed both immense power and compassion for the people. He was no ordinary human, but an immortal experimental subject who had escaped from the House of Evolution, a literal humanoid monster. Therefore, Zomberman always held high respect for heroes with noble character. His words were undoubtedly the greatest affirmation and reverence for King's character. However, upon hearing this, King's expression became a bit unnatural. This sounds a bit ambiguous. Never mind, maybe he didn't mean it that way. These S-class heroes had just protected the Earth, risking their lives for the safety of all humanity. How could he maliciously misinterpret the other's meaning here? Just as King was about to say something, Zomberman spoke again, lighting another cigarette with a smile as gentle as a spring breeze. Kind, overbearing, and powerful. If I were a woman, I might have already fallen in love with you, Mr. King. King. What the hell do you mean? The two chatted for a few more minutes, mostly catching up on the situations they were each responsible for. At that moment, King noticed that the life force of several heroes was growing weaker, so he waved his hand to stop the small talk. He stepped forward and knelt in front of Tatsumaki. Looking at the little lowly lying on the ground with a weak aura, he placed his hand on her forehead. Given the current situation in Z-City, it will take some time for the rescue team to arrive. I'll handle the healing. As he spoke, King's palm gradually glowed with a crimson light. Vitality-filled energy erupted from his hand and slowly flowed into Tatsumaki's body. Zomberman, watching from the side, was shocked. As someone who died and came back to life frequently, Zomberman had an extraordinary perception of life force. Because of this, he immediately noticed that after the red light emitted from King's hand, Tatsumaki's aura stabilized instantly and even showed signs of continuous improvement. To think Mr. King even knows a healing technique. What a mysterious man. Just how many secrets do you have? Ignoring Zomberman's inquisitive gaze from the side, King was currently focused on sensing Tatsumaki's body, extending his consciousness into her. Her brain had suffered significant damage, clearly a backlash from the overuse of psychic power. Her body was mostly fine, just some superficial wounds, though she had lost a lot of blood due to her small stature. After fully assessing Tatsumaki's physical condition, King controlled his energy to begin the treatment. His energy surged through Tatsumaki's body, bringing powerful vitality wherever it went. It began to repair her damaged body, and her expression, which had been tense from the pain in her brain, started to relax. The treatment lasted for about a minute. Tatsumaki's breathing became steady, and her delicate face gradually relaxed, no longer showing signs of pain. Done. Tatsumaki should wake up soon. I've completely healed her injuries. However, unexpected things always happen from time to time. King hadn't expected Tatsumaki to recover so quickly, or perhaps she had already shown signs of waking up and was only unconscious due to the exhaustion of her psychic power. While King was still crouching in front of Tatsumaki, with one hand on her head, leaning in close to check if there were any lingering aftereffects in her body, the fingers of the green-haired little lowly lying on the ground suddenly twitched, and she slowly woke up. Her eyelashes fluttered, and a pair of emerald-like eyes slowly opened. Tatsumaki felt as if she were in a hot spring, her whole body warm and cozy. What's going on? Could it be that I've died and gone to heaven? What happened to that monster covered in flames? In the previous battle, Tatsumaki hadn't lasted until King's arrival. She had already fallen unconscious due to the depletion of her psychic power before he came to save the day. Strange, it feels like something is pressing against my forehead. The first thing Tatsumaki felt was the weight on her head, as if something was blocking her from above. Having just woken up from a coma, her mind wasn't very clear, and she instinctively tried to push away the thing pressing on her head. King also noticed something was wrong with Tatsumaki. Why did she suddenly start trembling? And her head was moving more violently. Could the backlash of the psychic power be flaring up again? Thinking of this, King leaned in even closer, pouring his consciousness wholeheartedly into Tatsumaki's body, searching for any possible lingering issues. Tatsumaki shook her head twice and found she still couldn't get rid of that pressed feeling. Her brows furrowed. What is it? As soon as she opened her eyes, she saw the sunlight piercing through the dust, followed by a face very close to hers, a terrifying face full of majesty and dominance. Ah! In an instant, Tatsumaki was scared into screaming. Under the influence of her psychic power, she shot back dozens of meters. She looked blankly at Zomberman, who was watching the show from the side, and then at King, who was still crouching on the ground looking somewhat dazed. Her face turned red instantly. Not just the red of embarrassment, but also the red of anger. "You damn Scarface. You perverted, creepy, scar-faced King. What did you do to me while I was unconscious?" "King." Zomberman, amazed smiley. Chapter 169, Chapter 170, I have learned much. 920 words. Chapter 170, I have learned much. Looking at Tatsumaki, whose face was slightly flushed with embarrassment and who appeared incredibly annoyed, King felt a bit helpless. One look was enough to tell that this little girl, Tatsumaki, had definitely gotten the wrong idea. Although Tatsumaki was indeed quite attractive and her petite frame could easily stir a desire to protect her, King had no interest in such a little lowly. He waved his hand, his face showing not a trace of dissatisfaction or anger at being misunderstood. He maintained his domineering and majestic expression, his voice calm. "Tatsumaki, I meant no offense. I was merely treating your injuries just now, that is all." Hearing King's words, Tatsumaki's emotions gradually calmed down. Only then did she realize that although she had been severely injured earlier, she was now full of vitality and couldn't feel the slightest bit of pain. This guy King actually possesses the ability to heal others. Tatsumaki also realized she seemed to have truly misunderstood King. She lowered her head in embarrassment, but her tsundere personality made it difficult for her to apologize directly. But facing King's eyes, which were as calm as a still well, Tatsumaki eventually crossed her arms in embarrassment and muttered in a low voice, "I'm sorry, okay." Seeing Tatsumaki like this, King felt the urge to tease a child and made a gesture of cupping his ear. "Tatsumaki, what are you saying? Your voice is too low, I can't quite hear you." How could Tatsumaki not know King was doing this on purpose? She looked around to confirm that no one besides Zomberman was listening, then took a deep breath and raised her voice. "I'm sorry, okay. Can't hear you." "Ah. I said I'm sorry." Seeing Tatsumaki apologize loudly with a face full of shame, King finally nodded in satisfaction. Not bad. Sometimes teasing a child is beneficial for one's physical and mental well-being. Now, it was time to go and wake up the other heroes. Over the next while, King continued to treat the other severely injured S-Class heroes, and they gradually regained consciousness from their comas. After Superalloy Darkshine woke up, he stared silently at his battered muscles, the dark sheen on his body appearing to have dimmed quite a bit. Seeing King beside him, Superalloy Darkshine hesitated several times but ultimately didn't dare to speak. "My muscles are now battered and broken. Having lost the muscles I was so proud of, what right do I have to speak with Mr. King?" Previously, Darkshine would occasionally claim to be one of the 3 people in the Hero Association not to be trifled with, and all of this reliance stemmed from his perfect muscles. But now, Superalloy Darkshine had lost his muscles, and his once unparalleled confidence seemed to shrivel at this moment. Just then, Darkshine suddenly felt the light in front of him dim slightly, as if something was blocking it. "Ah, after losing the muscles I was so proud of, has even my future become bleak?" Darkshine subconsciously looked up, but what appeared before him was not a dark future, but a tall, blonde figure. "Mr. King? Why are you? You are lost." King's words interrupted what Superalloy Darkshine was about to say. These 4 precise words were like a sharp sword, piercing through Darkshine's now crumbling and fragile heart. He lowered his head deeply, his expression dejected. As one of the S-Class heroes who greatly admired King, he didn't want to hide anything from him. "Yes, Mr. King, I admit I am lost now. The muscles I was so proud of have been beaten into this state. The opponent was so much stronger than me, can I really still believe in my muscles?" Previously, Darkshine had been incredibly confident, but the source of all that confidence was built on the premise that his muscles could withstand any damage. Now that his muscles had been beaten into this near-collapsing state, Darkshine's mindset had crumbled along with them. Facing Darkshine's confession, King simply shook his head and placed a hand on his mountain-like trapezius muscle, his tone serious. "There is one thing you are wrong about. Your muscles are not worthless. Immediately after, King began a session of guided instruction. King, you might as well think about who the mastermind behind this crisis was. Superalloy Darkshine, the mastermind of this battle? It was obviously God, whom you blocked. King, very well. Has God not been banished by me? We drove God away from Earth. We are the winners, right? Superalloy Darkshine, yes, we achieved the final victory. The God who invaded the world was eventually driven off Earth, but, King, then that's it. We humans achieved victory and defeated God. You are also a human, so you likewise achieved victory in this battle, while God is the loser. Superalloy Darkshine was stunned at this moment. He vaguely realized what King was trying to express, and the confidence and light in his eyes seemed to gradually return. You mean? King nodded. Looking at Superalloy Darkshine's state, he guessed that the guy had probably understood. Exactly. You are the winner, and God is the loser. Therefore, you, Superalloy Darkshine God. As soon as these words were spoken, the muscles on Superalloy Darkshine's body became even shinier, and his aura seemed to strengthen. The dejection and pain on his face vanished, replaced by an excitement that radiated from his dark complexion. So that's how it is. Mr. King, I have learned much. Chapter 170, Chapter 171, What's going on here? 1186 words. Chapter 171, What's going on here? Following the awakening of the more resilient Superalloy Darkshine, the other S-Class heroes also began to slowly wake up. Bang looked at Zed City, which had been completely reduced to scorched earth, his old eyes gazing worriedly into the distance, his fists unconsciously clenching. Chiranko. His dojo was located in the suburbs on the outskirts of Zed City, but looking at it now, the mountain where the dojo was situated had likely been leveled by the aftershocks of the battle. I hope that kid escaped. If it were just the dojo being destroyed, Bang might only feel heartache and helplessness, but if Chiranko had also died in the aftershocks, Bang would spend the rest of his days in pain and guilt. He wouldn't think it was because Chiranko was too weak, but would always believe it was his own weakness and incompetence that failed to defeat the powerful enemy and protect him. Flashy Flash sat squatting on the ground without a word, his long golden hair drooping over his cheeks, looking somewhat dejected. He remembered the battle before he lost consciousness, that monster whose whole body shone with diamond brilliance, who had actually crushed him so easily in the domain of speed. For Flashy Flash, who had always taken pride in his super speed, this was simply a great insult. But that wasn't even the greatest insult. More importantly, that monster shining with diamond brilliance wasn't even in its final form. According to other heroes, this guy evolved later and became much stronger than during the diamond shining period. Was my speed really crushed so easily? Just as Flashy Flash was feeling a bit discouraged, a pig-slaughtering scream caught his attention. Gwa! Why have I become only 1 meter tall? Damn it, I'm not even as tall as your thighs. Where is that mosquito-like voice coming from? Flashy Flash looked up in confusion, only to see a short, muscular dwarf wearing a large blue tank top, jumping in anger. Although the other's face had become very youthful, relying on that old-fashioned blue tank top and the signature short golden hair, Flashy Flash still recognized the identity of this little dwarf. This guy is Tank Top Master. Immediately after, Flashy Flash discovered that although Tank Top Master was covered in blood, he hadn't suffered much damage. Was it some kind of special secret technique? As a ninja, Flashy Flash naturally knew that many secret techniques existed in this world, some of which might involve burning the body to recover from injuries. On the other side, King was located in some ruins, observing the state of the S-Class heroes after they woke up, while his divine sense continuously scanned in all directions. After all, that god fellow was only expelled and not completely killed. Some level of precaution was needed to prevent him from making a comeback. The S-Class heroes couldn't handle any more trouble right now, so it was natural to be cautious. What is that? His divine sense scanned something falling rapidly from 10,000 meters in the air. King abruptly looked up, a hint of solemnity flashing in his eyes. Such speed. And even the energy fluctuations are so massive. Just as King was preparing to enter his Deathgate form to go up and investigate, he suddenly sensed a familiar aura within that rapidly approaching energy fluctuation. Oh, it's the bald demon king. King sat back down, all the tension on his face dissipating into nothingness at that moment. The bald demon king Saitama, in a sense, this guy was the synonym for absolute safety. It seems there's an equally massive energy aura following him. King sensed it for a moment, and his eyebrows couldn't help but twitch. Is it Sun Sperm? The bald demon king didn't kill this guy but brought him back to Earth instead. It seems the convergence of world lines is truly breathtaking. It can even be rounded back like this. You should know that although Saitama tamed Black Sperm as a pet in the original work, that only happened when the other party was incredibly weak. But the current Sun Sperm shows no signs of being weakened. He still maintains extremely powerful strength, capable of easily insta-killing all S-class heroes. He can even be tamed as a pet like this. King didn't know what to say, only that it was truly worthy of Saitama. Boom boom boom. A stream of light burning with flames fell from the sky, kicking up dust everywhere the moment it hit the ground. A thunderous roar accompanied by an invisible shockwave swept in all directions. All the S-class heroes immediately forgot about resting and looked over nervously, mobilizing all the power in their bodies, ready for another life-and-death struggle. A tall figure burning with raging flames gradually appeared in the dust. It was indeed Sun Sperm. In an instant, the expressions of all the S-class heroes changed, all of them acting as if facing a formidable enemy. Metal Bat, disregarding his not yet fully recovered body, grabbed his bat and rushed forward with a ferocious expression. Tank Top Master glanced at his body, which was now only 1 meter tall, yet he still bit his teeth, crossed his arms over his chest, and began to charge with large strides, roaring. Tank Top Tackle. The moment Tatsumaki saw Sun Sperm, angry killing intent erupted in her eyes. Her psychic power poured out like a whistling ocean, turning into a sky full of spikes. You actually dare to come back? Die for me. Zombieman first glanced at King. Seeing that the strongest man on Earth showed no shock on his face, he frowned at first, then understood. Even Sun Sperm's return was within Mr. King's expectations. Then there's no need to act. Mr. King's plan doesn't require interference. Watchdog Man looked up at Sun Sperm, then at the calm and composed King, before lowering his head as if nothing had happened, continuing to scratch his ear with his hind leg. Pig God, after also observing King's reaction, knew that nothing should be wrong, and then went back to stuffing himself with snacks to replenish his energy. Only 3 S-class heroes present launched an attack without hesitation. One was Metal Bat, one was Tank Top Master, and the other was Tatsumaki. And the biggest thing these 3 S-class heroes had in common was that they temporarily had no brains. Tank Top Master presumably had his brain capacity shrink along with his body, as he didn't observe King's situation at all. Metal Bat's blood rushed to his head in an instant, remembering the ridiculous way he had been casually insta-killed before, and he couldn't help but rush forward in anger. As for Tatsumaki, it was purely because she remembered Sun Sperm's previous provocation and his cruel behavior toward Blast that she instantly burned with rage and launched an attack without further thought. Sun Sperm, who had just been brought back to Earth by his master Saitama, had only just poked his head out when he saw 3 attacks surging toward him, leaving him completely bewildered. What's going on here? Chapter 171, Chapter 172, already kept as a pet? 991 words. Chapter 172, already kept as a pet? As soon as he returned, he saw 3 ant-level little fellows wanting to attack him, which almost made Sun Sperm laugh out loud. With just a glance, he realized that these S-class heroes rushing toward him were all weaklings he had easily finished off earlier. In fact, whether it was Tatsumaki or Metal Bat, both were at the same level in Sun Sperm's eyes. They were both weaklings who could be swatted to death at will. He hadn't even taken the initiative to act, yet these ants dared to attack him? Sun Sperm instinctively wanted to strike back, but his raised hand immediately froze in midair. No. He absolutely couldn't choose to fight, otherwise, he would definitely be slapped to death. Before his hand had even risen a millimeter, Sun Sperm sensed 2 unfriendly gazes staring at him. One gaze came from his newly acknowledged master and Big Daddy, the bald demon king Saitama. The other came from a blonde man quietly watching from a distance, despite being expressionless, that majestic and overbearing face made him shudder. If he acted, he would definitely be instantly killed by these two. At this thought, Sun Sperm didn't dare to move, allowing the attacks from Tatsumaki, Metal Bat, and Tank Top Master to rush toward him. Just then, the dust was swiped away by a light palm, and a shiny bald head reflected a blinding light under the sun. So much dust. Is there a construction site being demolished here? Or is it like they say on TV, the environmental pollution has gotten too serious lately? Only then did everyone see clearly that a man they were all familiar with was standing next to Sun Sperm. One Punch Man, Saitama. Saitama had just raised his head when he saw Metal Bat and Tank Top Master right in front of him, along with a sky full of psychic power spikes. Why is he here? Tank Top Master and Metal Bat's expressions changed drastically at the same time, but they had attacked with all their might and were already right in front of him. They couldn't stop. What are you doing? Even for a welcome, this is a bit too enthusiastic. Do you want to hug me or crash into me? Saitama complained casually, stopping Metal Bat's rapidly swinging bat with one hand and holding back the charging Tank Top Master with one foot. Then, he blew a breath, and a violent hurricane instantly formed in the air, crushing all the psychic power spikes released by Tatsumaki with unrivaled power. In just an instant, the combined attacks of the three were completely neutralized by Saitama. Seeing Saitama step in to block the attacks for him, Sun Sperm finally breathed a secret sigh of relief. It wasn't that he feared the attacks of these three ants. On the contrary, even if the attacks from Metal Bat, Tank Top Master, and Tatsumaki hit him, he wouldn't suffer any damage. After all, the difference in their magnitudes was too great. Even though Sun Sperm had been severely beaten by the bald demon king in the universe and suffered significant injuries, he was still a genuine god-level monster. Tatsumaki didn't even rank at the top of the above dragon level, let alone try to challenge a god-level monster like Sun Sperm. The most important thing was his stance. If Sun Sperm allowed the three's attacks to hit him, it would be a great insult and a sign of Saitama's indifference toward him. If he endured the attack this time, there would be more bullying later. After all, Sun Sperm had previously severely injured almost all the S-class heroes by himself, so they would surely hold a grudge. But if he fought back, Saitama and King, whose strength far exceeded his, would take action and beat him, a god-level monster, into a pulp. Therefore, Saitama blocking the attacks was the best outcome. It proved that Saitama valued him as a pet and avoided the consequence of taking the wrong side. Seeing Saitama actually blocking attacks for their former enemy, the S-class heroes instantly felt a bad premonition. After all, throughout the entire battle, they hadn't seen this One Punch Man, whose strength was said to be bottomless, even once. It was as if he had vanished from the face of the earth. Could it be, has this One Punch Man guy defected to the monsters? The young and vigorous Metal Bat had an impatient temperament and was about to demand an explanation, but before he could speak, King's voice resonated across the field. Everyone, lower your guard. Saitama has already subdued him. Sun Sperm is no longer an enemy, but One Punch Man's newly acquired pet. Huh? Tatsumaki's eyes widened, and she couldn't help but let out a questioning sound, staring incredulously at Saitama's shiny bald head. This guy subdued that powerful monster covered in flames? You've got to be kidding me. As someone who had experienced the battle firsthand, Tatsumaki knew exactly how powerful Sun Sperm was. Even as the tornado of terror, she had no ability to resist in front of Sun Sperm and was easily finished off in an instant. Most importantly, Blast, who had always been mysterious and powerful in Tatsumaki's heart, had also been defeated by this monster called Sun Sperm. The opponent was clearly powerful to an extreme degree. And now you're telling me that a boiled egg-looking bald guy with unknown strength actually subdued this guy as a pet. But on second thought, her doubts got stuck in her throat. Tatsumaki remembered that she had also fought Saitama before, and the result of that encounter was still fresh in her memory. From beginning to end, Tatsumaki hadn't managed to cause even a fraction of damage to Saitama, whom she had considered weak, and was easily defeated as if he were just playing around. If it's this guy and King, then defeating Sun Sperm should be possible, right? Chapter 172, Chapter 173, They Are the True Heroes. 1,221 words. Chapter 173, They Are the True Heroes. In the end, the S-Class heroes had no choice but to accept the fact. The One-Punch Man, Saitama, had used just a few slaps to force the Sun Sperm, who had easily annihilated them, to its knees and subdue it as a pet. Feeling the unfriendly gazes of the surrounding insects, Sun Sperm lowered its head awkwardly. It could wipe them all out with a single fart. Being stared at with such murderous intent by these weak, pathetic insects, felt so uncomfortable. Sun Sperm, of course, knew why the heroes held such great hostility towards it. After all, it was the one who had beaten the heroes into critical condition. After waiting another dozen or so minutes, the Hero Association's rescue team finally arrived at the scene. At the helicopter, Sitch, with his prominent nose, personally rushed to the scene. The moment he descended via the rope, he hurriedly dashed through the ruins. His eyes were filled with anxiety. According to the report from Zomberman, the S-Class heroes were all severely wounded, with several even in critical condition, hovering on the brink of death at any moment. You must not be in any danger. The S-Class heroes are one of humanity's greatest trump cards, the last hope for humankind in the face of crisis. If even the S-Class heroes were to suffer a complete defeat in the face of such a severe crisis, then humanity's destruction would not be far behind. However, Sitch still held on to a sliver of hope in his heart. After all, according to the report Zomberman could provide, the severely wounded S-Class heroes did not include the strongest man on Earth, King. The other party seemed to have been continuously holding back the mastermind behind this crisis, the entity known as God. As long as the legendary Mr. King is still here, humanity will not be destroyed. Even if all the S-Class heroes fall, humanity will still have hope for survival. This was Sitch's attitude towards King, and it was also the world's attitude towards King. Finally, the life detection radar picked up signs of living beings. Delighted, Sitch struggled to climb up a towering pile of rubble and shouted ahead. Everyone from the Hero Association, are you all right? Huh? Sitch was stunned. The large group of rescue personnel who followed him up were also stunned. They watched as the S-Class heroes, each glowing with health and walking steadily, showed no signs whatsoever of being severely injured. After some explanation, Sitch was even more shocked. He felt as if his entire worldview was being shattered and rebuilt. Huh? What do you mean all the S-Class heroes were instantly one-shotted by that monster engulfed in flames? And what do you mean King, after defeating God, immediately returned to the scene and healed all of you? And also, what the hell do you mean the monster that one-shotted you has been subdued as a pet by the One-Punch Man, Saitama? A series of events flooded Sitch's mind like a burst dam, causing him to short-circuit for a moment. He rubbed his reddened, prominent nose, looking somewhat hesitant. He opened his mouth as if to say something but ultimately closed it again. Forget it. Perhaps this is just a testament to the strength of the strongest man on Earth, King, and the One-Punch Man he introduced is also incredibly powerful. This is a good thing for humanity. Knowing the crisis had been resolved, Sitch took a deep breath and looked solemnly at the S-Class heroes in their tattered clothes, his eyes filled with admiration. He straightened his posture, his expression serious and earnest, and bowed deeply. For fighting so desperately for the future of humanity, I, Sitch, on behalf of the Hero Association and all of humankind, express our most sincere gratitude and respect to you. Tatsumaki's lips curved into a faint smile, though on the surface she still waved her hand impatiently. A disaster of this level. I might not have been able to handle it alone. Luckily, this guy King was here to help. Next time there's a major problem, I will still be the first to arrive. Superalloy Darkshine had regained his confidence. He flexed his fully restored muscles, raising his arms and half-squatting. Looking at his sculpted, rock-like muscles gleaming with a dark, glossy sheen, his face beamed with a confident smile. No matter what crisis humanity faces, I will face the difficulties together with my muscles, ensuring the flame of hope for humanity never goes out. Flashy Flash flicked the sharp long sword in his hand, his golden hair floating around his cold, handsome face. No matter what monster it is, I will use the blade in my hand to sever its head. It has always been this way, and it will never change. Throughout the entire battle, Flashy Flash's performance could be said to be brilliant. If he hadn't single-handedly held off the enemy's strongest, Diamond Sperm, for so long when the 5 monster Cardas attacked, the Hero Association might have already been defeated. Atomic Samurai stood awkwardly to the side, a toothpick in his mouth. Honestly, looking at the whole battle, apart from fighting the Führer ugly, he basically had no notable achievements to speak of. Even when he later faced Sun Sperm, he was instantly one-shotted, not even having time to react before being critically wounded. But seeing everyone around him making grand declarations, he couldn't help but clench his teeth, accidentally biting through the toothpick in his mouth. No matter what problems arise, I will always stand on humanity's side. If any monster wants to harm humanity, they'll have to get past the sword in my hand first. The other S-Class heroes also expressed their stances one after another. Without exception, they all firmly stood on the side of humanity and the Hero Association, using their own words to declare their belief in protecting humanity. Sitch watched this scene with heartfelt relief, feeling his eyes grow a bit moist. He lifted his sleeve to wipe them. These were the S-Class heroes, the true pinnacle of the Hero Association, the vanguard protecting humanity, the real heroes who face danger head-on. King watched this scene quietly, a faint smile on his face. As for the bald demon king, Saitama, he watched the heroes' pledges alongside King with somewhat vacant eyes. Sun Sperm crouched on the ground, looking exactly like a lapdog, occasionally stealing timid glances at the silent duo. What are these two big shots thinking? Why aren't they saying a word? Could they be thinking about how to finish me off? At this thought, Sun Sperm involuntarily shivered, subtly inching a few meters further away, afraid the two big bosses might one day, in a bad mood, decide to make a meal out of it. Saitama turned his head and looked at the tall, blonde man beside him. He was one of the few opponents Saitama had found since becoming invincible, and also his good friend. King, the words they said in their pledges are so full of personal character. It really fits my impression of heroes. Hearing this, King nodded, patted Saitama's shoulder with a smile, his usually calm and steady voice tinged with amusement. Of course it fits. After all, they are the true heroes. Chapter 173, Chapter 174, Did I Still Need a Cheat? 829 words. Chapter 174, Did I Still Need a Cheat? This disaster that almost caused human extinction was finally resolved by the Hero Association. To be precise, it was resolved by the Hero Association's the strongest man on Earth, King, and the recently famous One-Punch Man Saitama. The Hero Association naturally wouldn't let this opportunity slip by and immediately mobilized the PR department to heavily publicize the incident. For a time, the Hero Association's reputation in society grew significantly again, even almost surpassing the government. The craze for the profession of hero in society reached a new level. People began to idolize heroes even more than entertainment stars. Under the Hero Association's portrayal, the strongest man on Earth, King, and the powerful and distinctive One-Punch Man Saitama almost became national idols. At the public's request and due to the great achievements of King and Saitama themselves, the Hero Association decided to promote their rankings. King, who was S-Class rank 5, was promoted to S-Class rank 1 after discussion, surpassing Blast, who had long occupied the top spot of the S-Class. This wasn't just a simple achievement. The Hero Association's higher-ups didn't actually dare to do this directly. At most, they would have made King S-Class rank 2, taking Tornado's place. The reason this promotion skipped directly to S-Class rank 1 was due to someone's full guarantee. That's right, the person who gave the personal guarantee was the mysterious powerhouse who returned from space heavily injured, the S-Class rank 1, Blast. He first praised King's terrifying strength before the world, then personally announced his abdication and recommendation of a more worthy successor in front of the cameras, instantly setting the internet ablaze. King's fame grew even greater, completely leaving the second-place Sweet Mask behind. His popularity reached an undisputed, league of his own #1 on the national charts. People knew that it was this legendary the strongest man on Earth who saved the world, and it was he who prevented humanity from the crisis of extinction. King is great and worthy of praise. And Saitama, the One-Punch Man who also had great achievements, became S-Class rank 3, taking the original position of Bang. As for why he didn't directly become S-Class Rank 2, the higher-ups of the Hero Association still considered it carefully. Although Saitama's achievements this time were indeed very dazzling, Tornado, who was S-Class Rank 2, had after all been fighting diligently on the front lines for many years and also performed remarkably in this incident. In terms of seniority and achievements, Saitama temporarily couldn't compare to the long-serving Tornado, thus he settled for S-Class Rank 3. As Saitama's influence expanded, observant people were surprised to find that there seemed to be more and more bald people on the streets. Moreover, these bald heads generally tended to be younger. Previously, most of those with smooth heads were middle-aged balding men, but now they were mostly teenagers. They all imitated Saitama's hairstyle, believing that being bald was really cool, and maybe they could even gain power as strong as the One Punch Man Saitama by shaving their heads. As time passed, Saitama, who was originally happy because of the significant increase in salary and benefits, gradually began to look worried. He went from frequently going out at the beginning to becoming cautious now. He had to wear a wig and make sure it wouldn't be blown away by the wind before he dared to step out. But even with such a disguise, he was still often recognized on the spot in the street. It couldn't be helped. Saitama's iconic features weren't just his shiny bald head, but also those dull eyes and that rounded face that looked like a simple line drawing. Later on, every time Saitama went out shopping, he would jump directly from his doorstep to his destination, relying on high-altitude jumping to avoid the fanatical crowds. Meanwhile, in a slightly luxurious villa, King lay on a soft large bed, staring straight at the faint blue data panel in front of him, as the system's prompt sounded in his ears. Ding! Congratulations to the host for successfully defeating God, heavily wounding God, and driving him back to the higher dimension. Option 1. Violently beat the God in front of you until he kneels, letting this fellow who appeared in the lower dimension and calls himself a higher being see what it means by there is always someone better, and what a super-numerical monster with infinite adaptation is. Option 1 Reward, System Item X2, Random Ability Enhancement X1. Ding! Rewards have been distributed. Congratulations to the host for obtaining System Item, True Man Dual Scroll. Congratulations to the host for obtaining System Item, Anywhere Door. Ding! Congratulations to the host for obtaining a Random Ability Enhancement. Adapt to Heaven and Earth has evolved into Infinite Evolution. Such a heaven-defying ability was actually enhanced again. Now even King himself was a bit overwhelmed. Am I really using cheats in this stage? Chapter 174, Chapter 175. This is so damn awesome. 1102 words. Chapter 175. This is so damn awesome. King wasn't in a hurry to check his enhanced abilities. Instead, he chose to first open the detailed descriptions of the two newly acquired items. When time isn't pressing, of course one should follow the proper order. True Man Dual Scroll. After using this scroll, it will forcibly split off a space that cannot be disturbed or destroyed, pulling the selected target into it to engage in a true man's duel. The space will only be dispelled when one party dies or the initiator of the dual scroll accepts surrender. Item Special Effect. The selected target can only be a single individual, but our side can have 2 or more participants, with no upper limit. Moreover, escape is impossible before the dual scroll ends, including but not limited to forms such as soul, microparticles, divine sense, or dimensional life. Current item usage count, 1. After glancing at the general effect, King immediately sucked in a sharp breath. This is pure cheating. It has to be said, the name of this heaven-defying item is quite misleading. It says, True Man Dual Scroll, but what does duel actually mean? It's not you and me facing off one-on-one, it's you alone dueling all of us. Furthermore, you can't escape from this space. It can only be dispelled if I, the initiator of the duel space, accept the opponent's surrender, or if the opponent is beaten to death. Wait, if this scroll can be used on a god, unable to escape, unable to summon multiple allied units to join in and force the opponent into a duel. In that case, couldn't I take the bald demon King Saitama with me to find the god, then forcibly drag the god into the dual world for a righteous 2v1 action? With an excited heart, King clicked open the detailed introduction of the second system item. Anywhere Door, a gate that can shuttle between worlds at will, even capable of locating different dimensions. If you have the corresponding coordinates, it can even perform tracking teleportation. Item special effect: the Anywhere door cannot be destroyed and will not fail. Once placed, it establishes a one-way passage. Only the master of the Anywhere door and the master's allied units may enter or exit. King stared fixedly at the blue data panel before him, his gaze lingering on the item description of the Anywhere door. After a few seconds, he suddenly smiled, his face revealing an undisguised, surging killing intent. God, I'm coming for your damn life. With the Anywhere door, plus the True Man dual scroll, not only can I directly pinpoint the god's specific location in the higher dimension, but I can also forcibly drag the god into the dual arena, preventing its escape. It seems the system really wants me to kill that god. Even the system items it grants are more or less related to slaying the god. Although somewhat puzzled about why the system is so fixated on defeating the god, King didn't have any other thoughts. The reason is simple: the foundation of all his power was obtained through the system. What's the point in doubting it? Moreover, based on this guy's attitude, King had actually roughly guessed the system's vague true identity. Although this idea might not be accurate, it was enough for King to infer more things. Now then, let's see what this most heaven-defying skill I obtained has evolved into. King opened his character panel. Before opening the skill tab, he first took a moment to admire his own dazzling, overwhelmingly tyrannical stats that were almost blinding. Name: King. Gender: male. Abilities: King Engine, Ultra Speed Regeneration, Fine Control, Energy Control, Indestructible Soul, Infinite Evolution. Strength: 20,000. Speed: 20,000. Stamina: 20,000. Defense: 20,000. Spirit: 20,000. Note: the standard for entering dragon level is all attributes reaching 10. Remark: you have now reached a level of invincibility throughout the entire One Punch Man world. Even Saitama would have to adopt a serious attitude when fighting the current you. You have only one terrifying enemy left in this world. Such beautiful attribute values, it makes me almost unable to resist letting out a sinister laugh. That's right, King's current attributes are all 20,000. Compared to when he first transmigrated, all attribute values have nearly doubled. This is the result of adaptation, and also a form of perfect evolution of the body to a certain degree. After experiencing the battle with the god, in order to effortlessly crush the god, King maintained a physical state capable of overwhelming the god, and his strength continuously increased under the effect of adaptation. To adapt a body capable of perfectly meeting combat, its attribute values also needed to achieve all-around perfection. Under the divine power of adapt to heaven and earth, King ultimately evolved perfect values of 20,000 in all attributes. His psychic energy, which had been somewhat lagging behind, finally caught up with the main force. Attribute values aren't simply a matter of 1 plus 1, to a greater extent, they amplify each other. For example, the average attributes of the lowest tier dragon level monsters are only 10. When King first transmigrated and obtained the Gate of Death physique, his attribute values were around 10,000. Could finding 10 dragon level monsters defeat King back then? This is obviously impossible. To put it bluntly, if the current King and the King from when he first transmigrated were to collide, the current King wouldn't even need to move, the other would smash into a bloody mist on his own. After admiring his own awesome stats for a while, King reluctantly opened the skill tab and then clicked on the newly added Infinite Evolution. Infinite Evolution. You will possess incredible potential. As long as you are oppressed in any situation, suppressed in any circumstance, or feel inner pain and distress, you will continuously evolve until you break through everything before you, racing wildly through evolution to reach the peak of all realms. Holy shit! After reading the skill introduction, even King, who had experienced so much and whose mindset had gradually stabilized, couldn't hold back and couldn't help but widen his eyes. He rubbed his eyes, confirming he hadn't misread, and then felt his brain buzzing. Has this skill become this ridiculously strong? The original, Adapt to Heaven and Earth, was already considered by King to be the most underworldly skill he had obtained so far. And now this, Infinite Evolution, strengthened from Adapt to Heaven and Earth, is simply the underworld within the underworld, heaven-defying among heaven-defying. Just this skill description alone, this is so damn awesome. Chapter 175, Chapter 176, Another Battle? 943 words. Chapter 176, Another Battle? Everything is now ready. The 2 items specifically designed for gods are in hand, and the skills, unbelievable to the extreme, have been stockpiled. But even so, King still does not plan to set out immediately to find the god. In the previous battle, he had left a soul mark on the god, and he could still sense a faint soul connection with it. The newly acquired Anywhere door can reach the other party's coordinates through any level of connection, so there is no need to search for them immediately. Ever since he arrogantly entered the altar last time and was severely suppressed by that damned god, King has become much more cautious. Until he is certain he can completely and easily crush the opponent, King will absolutely not set out. So next, he would properly improve his stats. Although his all-around stats have reached 20,000, King feels it is still not enough. After all, the opponent is a higher-dimensional being, a god invading the myriad worlds, and the high-dimensional world is the opponent's home turf. Therefore, King decided that until he honed his stats to the point of being peerless, he would never choose to act directly. What? In the somewhat messy home, Saitama quickly snatched the high-grade beef boiling in the pot with his chopsticks. The high-grade beef had already changed color, turning from the raw pink of fresh meat to a light brown, releasing a strong beef aroma and rising steam. Saitama looked at the beef he had blanched with satisfaction. He had timed it perfectly, letting the high-grade beef sit in the boiling hot pot water for exactly 7 seconds, pulling it out at its most tender and smooth. It was absolutely delicious. Saitama swallowed the high-grade beef, showing a satisfied expression, and after savoring it for a moment, he continued. King, are you serious? As long as I can beat you, you'll cover my food expenses for the next year? And you'll let me buy any game on the market, with you picking up the tab? Just a few minutes ago, Saitama was about to enjoy a delicious hot pot to celebrate his significant pay raise. But just as he got the beef ready, King appeared instantly out of nowhere like a ghost, and the original solo indulgence became a shared meal. Initially, Saitama felt a slight tinge of sadness, but after hearing King's request, the gloom in his heart vanished in an instant. Hearing Saitama's excited inquiry, King nodded with a smile, and the majestic, domineering expression on his face softened slightly. Of course. As long as you can defeat me, I can make everything you just said happen. In fact, as long as it's something money can solve, I'll handle it for you. But there is a prerequisite to all of this. First, you must defeat me, Saitama. Of course. Saitama devoured the remaining beef like a whirlwind, then stood up excitedly, his voice full of energy. Not only could he experience the joy of battle with his close friend, but he could also receive so many gifts. This was simply a win-win. I win twice by myself. Seeing Saitama agree so quickly, King looked confident. He had clearly never worried that Saitama would refuse. Someone like the bald demon king, who craves the joy of battle and lives a relatively frugal life, could never refuse such double happiness, both spiritual and material. Saitama quickly shed his loungewear and, with incredible speed, changed into his signature mustard yellow hero suit used for hero activities. His white cape fluttered in the air, and his shiny bald head gleamed. What's the plan? Are we going to the outskirts to fight now? I'm telling you, King, I'm definitely winning this bet. Hearing this, King shook his head, a slight smile playing on his lips. No, no, no. We aren't fighting on Earth. After all, our current level is too high. Earth cannot withstand a battlefield between the two of us. Today, I've specifically invited a guest who can take us to a suitable battleground and act as a referee. The next second, a silver light flashed beside King, and a scruffy blast, wearing a white combat suit, appeared beside him with a chuckle. Hello there. I've heard much about you, the legendary and mysterious One Punch Man. Seeing you is truly better than hearing 100 report. Who are you? Saitama was completely confused. Was this somewhat Chunibu-looking middle-aged uncle the battle guest? Blast was stunned for a moment before realizing that this One Punch Man didn't seem to know him. That shouldn't be. According to Blast's memory, he had given a public speech to the world's media not long ago, specifically mentioning the strongest man on Earth, King and One Punch Man. Yet now, One Punch Man, himself, Mr. Saitama, didn't recognize him. However, Blast had seen his share of storms after all. He immediately reached out with a confident smile. Then let's get to know each other, Mr. Saitama. My name is Blast. I was the former S-Class Rank 1, though the current S-Class Rank 1 is your friend, Mr. King. Oh. The three of them chatted for a bit, then Blast rolled his shoulders, his expression becoming serious and focused. Gentlemen, next I will teleport you to a location about 1 light-year away from Earth. It's a massive meteor belt with countless fragments of shattered planets. The rest is up to you. I will act as the referee from a more distant planet. Let's go. Blast gave a low shout, and a brilliant silver light erupted from him. Spatial fluctuations rapidly spread, instantly enveloping the three of them. Chapter 176, Chapter 177, Serious Punch. 1421 words. Chapter 177, Serious Punch. In the deep starry sky, countless meteorites flowed continuously according to specific laws, endlessly forming a vast meteorite belt. Along with a flash of silver light, 3 figures appeared here simultaneously. Saitama was about to speak, but suddenly frowned and pinched his nose, asking in confusion. I almost forgot, there's no air in outer space. So how are we going to fight? Do we hold our breath? Hearing this, Blast and King looked at each other, momentarily unsure of what to say. Shock appeared on Blast's face, clearly showing total amazement at Saitama's current performance. It seemed he was encountering such a thing for the first time. Compared to the fussing Blast, King had long since grown accustomed to the bald Demon King's abnormality, and his expression showed little surprise. That's right, Saitama had forgotten the common knowledge that one cannot speak in outer space without air. He only remembered that he couldn't breathe. Therefore, without any medium at all, he actually just opened his mouth and spoke on the spot, his voice echoing clearly through outer space. As expected of Mr. Saitama, your miraculous traits are simply too many to count. Blast praised him sincerely. It was his first time seeing such an unbelievable existence. One must know that human speech is originally the vibration of vocal cords, which is then transmitted through air to be heard. Saitama's seemingly ordinary action was actually equivalent to being a law unto himself. He himself was the greatest law, so he didn't need to follow the laws of physics. However, the bald Demon King hadn't discovered his own uniqueness and still retained human common sense. Looking at Saitama, who was still pinching his nose and frowning, King spoke up with a hint of teasing in his tone. Saitama, did you know? According to the latest scientific research, bald people can actually breathe in outer space. Hey, really? How come I haven't seen that online? Saitama skeptically let go and took a deep breath of space radiation. Finding that he really didn't need to breathe, a look of joy appeared on his face. LOL, this cheating bald guy. Whoa, why didn't you say so earlier? So losing all my hair has this kind of benefit? Saitama didn't doubt the truth of King's words. After all, the other party was his good friend, and there was no reason to deceive him. Thus, believing this common sense, Saitama convinced himself that he truly didn't need to breathe in outer space. Watching Saitama strike a freestyle swimming pose in outer space like it was nothing, and even behaving no differently than when he was on Earth despite the lack of air and a medium for sound, Blast was shocked for the umpteenth time. Is Mr. Saitama always this ridiculous? It feels like his physical body can hardly be considered human anymore. Look who's talking. Did they forget human can't speak in outer space? King shrugged indifferently, then grabbed Blast and threw him toward an area outside the meteorite belt. It's fine. At least Saitama still looks like a human, and that's enough. Blast, floating continuously in space through the impact force on his body's surface, was truly speechless. Damn it, just tell me and let me teleport away myself. Why did you have to throw me? Blast immediately activated his spatial ability, teleporting directly into the distance and standing on a floating meteorite. He watched the two in the distance, raised his hand high, and then brought it down sharply. His voice reached Saitama and King's ears through the power of space. I declare, the battle begins. The moment his voice fell, a meteorite several thousand meters in diameter smashed out at extreme speed, arriving before Saitama's eyes in an instant. An unadorned punch smashed out, and the meteorite instantly exploded into a sky full of debris. Carrying his pursuit of games and gourmet food, Saitama resolutely flew forward, rushing in front of King and raising his fist high. Normal punch. Danger perception arose within his body, and King launched a counterattack without hesitation. The two men's fists collided fiercely in mid-air. Boom, boom, boom. An invisible airwave spread outward from the center of their collision, instantly pulverizing all surrounding meteorites. The violent shockwave caused the surrounding space to vibrate faintly. This time, their fists remained locked in mid-air, neither able to overcome the other for a moment. And in the very next instant, King's eyes narrowed, and the power he released increased by several degrees. A shocking thing happened. Saitama was actually sent flying, tumbling several times in the starry sky before coming to a stop. Saitama looked at his slightly smoking fist, then at King, who had knocked him back and was standing in the distance with his arms crossed. His battle intent blazed like a fierce fire meeting a gale. King, you've become stronger. You're really amazing. As soon as he finished speaking, Saitama rushed forward again, his expression becoming a bit more serious. He raised his right hand high and clenched his fingers into a fist. In an instant, hundreds and thousands of red fist shadows descended like a torrential rain. Every punch carried unrivaled destructive and impact force, forming an airtight wall that seemed ready to shatter heaven and earth in an instant. Consecutive normal punches. King responded in kind. He took a large step forward, crushing the void ahead with one foot. A violent force erupted from his body, and blood energy as vast as the abyss and sea covered his fist. In an instant, the originally crimson energy, after passing through some mysterious flow trajectory, actually transformed into a dazzling gold. His fists also burst with golden light like two shining suns. Emperor Fist. Hundreds and thousands of fists collided, each punch causing the world to break down. If they weren't in a meteorite belt, the aftershocks of their clash would have been enough to completely destroy the entire Earth. Even so, the area within several hundred kilometers of the two had turned into a vacuum. Those massive meteorites were completely shattered by the aftershocks of their battle, turning into a sky full of meteorite debris. With back-and-forth exchanges, every punch Saitama threw was perfectly blocked by King, and King's Emperor Fist was also withstood by Saitama's incredibly tough body. Sensing that Saitama's strength seemed slightly weaker than his own current level, King also roughly knew his current standing in his normal state. With 20,000 in all attributes, the current King, in his normal state, was already able to surpass Saitama's current unevolved normal state. It seems my strength is finally starting to catch up to the bald demon King. King felt like laughing when he thought about how he used to be chased and beaten like a dog by him during their previous battles. The current him was no longer that weak and pathetic existence from before. Thinking of this, King's punching speed couldn't help but increase further. Countless golden suns flashed in the void, each flash bursting with terrifying force. Every punch was enough to completely pulverize a meteorite over 10,000 meters wide. As the two sides engaged in a frantic exchange of blows, Saitama's expression grew more and more excited. His originally dull gaze had vanished without a trace, replaced by the joy of finding a powerful enemy. I really didn't expect that King had become so powerful, as expected of my good friend. Facing a powerful enemy who could fight him for a long time without losing, Saitama felt he had to give the other party enough respect. His attitude needed to be serious enough, rather than having a testing and playful mindset like he did now. Thinking of this, Saitama's originally rounded cheeks instantly became sharp and chiseled. His gaze became solemn and serious, veins bulged on his arms, and a power immense to the extreme grew wildly within this human body. King, who was exchanging blows with Saitama, suddenly noticed something was wrong. His pupils subconsciously contracted, and a massive sense of danger began to spread in his heart. Serious punch. Amidst the hundreds of consecutive normal punches, Saitama's gaze turned cold, and his punch in the serious state smashed out with an overwhelming, crushing pressure. P.S. Hehe, regarding this book, the author actually doesn't plan to write about the multiverse travel. After all, the current combat power system can already crush most anime. However, it is related to the multiverse. Just keep reading and you'll see. Chapter 177, Chapter 178, Gate of Death, Open. 677 words. Chapter 178, Gate of Death, Open. Looking at Saitama's suddenly sharp-featured face and the sense of crisis rising in his heart, King immediately realized that this punch was definitely a serious punch. Just as well. I also want to test whether my normal state can withstand a serious punch. King had already tested the normal series just now. Even the consecutive normal punches could be easily blocked by him. It could be said that his current normal state surpassed the normal state of the Bald Demon King, no? This was quite normal. In the original work, the Bald Demon King's normal state couldn't even kill Cosmic Garou. Before evolving, he was certainly inferior to the current king. Facing the Bald Demon King's serious punch, King unhesitatingly raised his fist high, the shining golden light burning fiercely like a blazing sun. Emperor Fist. The two fists collided fiercely in the void. Instantly, the world changed color, and an incomparable energy storm spread in all directions centered on the two of them. Without any obstacles, the energy storm expanded rapidly, spreading over 1,000 kilometers in an instant, sweeping up countless hard meteorites and crushing them into debris. A somewhat disheveled figure flew backward out of the energy storm, crashing heavily onto a certain meteorite. King lowered his head, looking at his limp left hand, his face showing no emotion. It seems that in my normal state, I'm still not enough to contend with a serious punch. King's right arm had a comminuted fracture, the bones inside were almost crushed into want snow crackers. Compared to the previous situation where being hit by a serious punch would cause him to explode into a blood mist, King's current physical strength had been greatly improved. Even facing it head-on, at most, an arm would break. Most importantly, he had still never used his full strength. Accompanied by a flash of green light, the originally broken and twisted arm recovered in an instant. A warm current surged within his body, flowing into King's limbs and bones, continuously strengthening his body as his stats steadily increased. In that case, 8 gates, Gate of Death, open. His blood and energy erupted in an instant, crimson steam spreading over his body. King's aura skyrocketed, and his pressure made the surrounding space tremble uncontrollably. The originally dark and silent starry sky turned blood-red in the blink of an eye. The energy condensed to the point of substance, filled everything around him, almost turning into King's domain. Feeling the powerful pressure washing over him, a smile couldn't help but appear on Saitama's face. The white cape behind him fluttered loudly under the blast of the blood-colored steam. Impressive aura, King. You're really something. It looks like I'll have to get a bit serious too. King and Saitama looked up at the same time and glanced at each other. Neither said anything more, everything was understood without words. Strong people always have a mutual respect for one another. When a strong person climbs the highest peak, the first thing they feel is a sense of accomplishment, followed by the cold wind at the summit, the loneliness born from standing against the wind. Especially when seeing that others can't even reach the halfway point, this extreme sense of loneliness grows even stronger. And at this time, when they turn their head to look at the peak on the other side, only to find someone else who has also reached the summit, how ecstatic they would be. The two rushed out simultaneously, yellow light and red light colliding at this moment. Serious series, omnidirectional serious punching. Saitama stepped on the void, his figure constantly flashing and flickering in the starry sky. In just an instant, he flickered nearly tens of thousands of times, leaving behind a series of rapidly moving afterimages around King. These appeared to be afterimages, but in the moment they were left behind, each one contained a charged serious punch. In the next second, all around King, hundreds and thousands of serious punches rained down overwhelmingly. Chapter 178, Chapter 179. Are these two guys really human? 1,109 words. Chapter 179. Are these two guys really human? At this moment, an extreme sense of crisis erupted. Every single punch is a serious punch. Is this the Bald Demon King's most powerful, omnidirectional serious punches? Feeling the frantic warnings from the depths of his soul, King's face showed no sign of fear. Instead, he wore an excited smile. Come. The stronger the attack, the better. The stronger your attack, the stronger I become. An excited curve gradually appeared on his face as the aura around him surged, becoming increasingly violent and brilliant. Crimson steam erupted from King's entire body. In an instant, he unleashed thousands of punches in all directions, accurately colliding with Saitama's serious punch one after another. Seeing King launch a counterattack so resolutely, all of Saitama's afterimages seemed to smile at that moment, their smiles revealing satisfaction and appreciation. That's right, this is how it should be. Fight. Enjoy the ultimate battle. Boom. 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 The violent roaring came from the collision and dissipation of their power, echoing through this dark and lonely starry sky. Web-like cracks appeared in the surrounding space, which completely shattered in the next second. The violent energy shockwaves swept through everything nearby with unrivaled momentum. Even a star like the sun would be pulverized by the extreme power of their exchange. As countless spatial rifts formed densely, space turbulence gushed out wildly. In an instant, a silver-white river descended upon the world with world-destroying power. Space turbulence, which ordinary people avoid like the plague and even god-level beings must treat with caution, was completely annihilated the moment it appeared, turning into the most basic energy particles in the universe. Tens of millions of kilometers away, Blast watched this scene from afar, his scalp tingling. At this moment, he wasn't looking with his eyes but was using spatial power to condense a light screen, watching the battle between Saitama and King in a live broadcast format. In the next instant, the screen formed by spatial power suddenly began to flicker continuously before distorting and shattering. The space in that area was completely torn apart. Even spatial power could not enter the energy field created by the two of them. A look of gravity flashed across Blast's face. He knew that Saitama and King were powerful, but their current performance far exceeded any god awakened from the past. Oh wait, they seem to have even blown up God himself. Just who on earth are these two? Blast always carried this doubt in his heart. He had been silently guarding the earth for so many years, yet he had never heard the names of these two great gods, Saitama and King. If they had been this powerful before, they should have been observed long ago. After returning to Earth not long ago, Blast immediately used his advanced permissions as S-Class Rank 1 to check all information on Saitama and King since they joined the Hero Association. At that moment, Blast was surprised to find that before the Hero Association appeared, the names of Saitama and King were almost invisible, and even their resumes were surprisingly ordinary. Before the Hero Association was founded, the Saitama recorded in the resume was just an ordinary office worker who had even been laid off, with nothing special about him at all. And the King recorded in the resume back then was also very ordinary. He seemed to be just an otaku living a peaceful life, never having shown such formidable strength. Could it be that before they decided to become heroes, they were both hidden masters who only wanted to live peaceful lives? Blast felt his guess was likely correct. After all, how could anyone transform from an ordinary person into such a terrifying, unobservable existence in just 3 short years? But then again, these two guys are truly exaggerated. Now, there was no need to observe through spatial power. Blast only needed to look up to see bursts of dazzling energy shockwaves coming from the distant starry sky. Even the stars in that area were gradually falling into disillusionment, their brilliant starlight dissipating without a trace in the collision of energy. From Blast's perspective, the brilliant galaxy now looked like a large chunk had been scooped out with a spoon. The area where Saitama and King were fighting had turned into a complete vacuum. Just then, he noticed a violent shockwave actually crossing a distance of tens of millions of kilometers and rushing toward his face, and he immediately lost his composure. What the hell is this? Are you two really still human? Without any hesitation, Blast repeatedly activated spatial power. Dozens of spatial barriers formed around him, while a large number of portals appeared nearby. The moment the energy shockwave arrived, it directly smashed through the dozens of thick spatial barriers, rushing forward with unrivaled momentum. Veins popped on Blast's forehead as he barely managed to guide the energy shockwave near him into a portal, teleporting it to an extremely distant location. Phew, those two are real freaks. It seems my choice to step down was correct. After all, I'm just an old guy left behind by the times. The new era still depends on the young to protect it. Blast floated in the vast starry sky with his arms crossed. His eyes behind those yellow goggles looked with relief at the distant, constantly roaring and shattering area. He never regretted giving up his position as S-Class Rank 1. One must know that before the Hero Association was founded, Blast was already performing various heroic deeds worldwide, making indelible contributions to human development. Blast was a hero from a long time ago and one of the founders of humanity's current system. Naturally, he hoped humanity would become even greater and capable of overcoming all difficulties. If it's the two of them, maybe they really can completely resolve the crisis of God and prevent God from invading Earth again. As an opponent who has fought God for many years, Blast knew in his heart that King driving God out of Earth earlier didn't mean his plans were destroyed. God is a high-dimensional existence. He must still be in the high-dimensional world, constantly repairing his injuries and waiting for an opportunity. Once any sign of fatigue is shown, he will not hesitate to make a comeback. The spatial power in that area seems to have recovered somewhat. Lost in thought, Blast suddenly noticed the spatial power in the distance was being repaired and instantly snapped back to reality. I can't forget my current job, which is to be the referee for the two great gods, Saitama and King. Chapter 179, Chapter 180, The Ultimate Clash of Power. 1002 words. Chapter 180, The Ultimate Clash of Power. Blast raised his hand, and the power of space was instantly activated. The space where Saitama and King were located was immediately mobilized, projecting their images onto the light screen here. However, in the very next instant, Blast only felt a strong sense of backlash hitting him, and the spatial light screen in front of him suddenly exploded into a shower of energy particles. He himself also received a significant backlash, as if he had been hit head-on by energy from such a vast distance using this light screen as a medium. Blood seeped from the corner of his mouth. Hey, this is a bit too exaggerated, Blast remarked in shock, while simultaneously offering an apology in his heart. Sorry, King, I can't act as the referee anymore. Now, I have even lost the qualification to just watch your battle. Sigh, those who know me would think I'm Blast, the protector of Earth. Those who don't would think I'm just out here cosplaying as space debris. Thinking that compared to those two fighting in the distance, he wasn't even as significant as dust and didn't even have the qualification to watch, he felt somewhat helpless. We're all clearly human, so why is the gap so massive? In Blast's view, the gap between himself and other S-Class heroes was already large enough, even larger than the gap between the lowest-ranked S-Class hero and an ordinary person. But now, compared to Saitama and King, he was more like the difference between Blast himself and a paramecium. At the place of return, all things were extinguished. Space turbulence continued to surge out incessantly, a silver tide carrying terrifying power as it raged on. Yet, at the very center of the ocean of space turbulence, there was a vacuum zone nearly 10 kilometers in diameter. That area had lost all rules. It was as if even space no longer existed, becoming a domain constructed solely by two immensely vast powers. Saitama and King were both fighting in earnest, trading punch for punch in a state of primitive physical combat. Now, every punch from the bald demon King was his most serious, far stronger than the punch that parted the Earth's atmosphere in the original story. There were no flashy beam struggles or dazzling special effects, there was only the ultimate competition of raw power. Saitama didn't need to follow any rules, he himself was the ultimate rule. King also didn't need to follow rules. His absurdly broken infinite evolution was his basis for ignoring them. A punch was thrown in an instant. Saitama didn't dodge or avoid it, taking the hit directly to the face. The power behind this hit caused even the incomparably powerful Saitama to feel quite a bit of pain, as a streak of crimson nosebleed slowly trickled down. He wiped his face, and looking at the crimson residue on his palm, the excitement on his face was beyond words. It's been a long time since I've seen myself bleed. This is the first time in 3 years. I'm truly grateful to you, King. As he spoke, Saitama's surging emotions caused the power within him to skyrocket, his aura instantly becoming several times stronger than before. King's pupils couldn't help but contract. Before he could even react, Saitama's clenched fist smashed into his face. Crack! A crisp sound of bone fracturing rang out. After his enhancement, the bald Demon King's punching power became even more terrifying, shattering half of King's skull on the spot with just one hit. Ultra-speed regeneration and infinite evolution immediately activated. Accompanied by the simultaneous flickering of green and white light, not only did King's face return to its original state in an instant, but his vitality even became several degrees more powerful. Hearing Saitama's words, King also smiled, though that domineering and majestic face looked somewhat stiff when smiling. "You're grateful to me, and I feel the same. After all, we are good friends, Saitama." The two powerhouses, who regarded each other as close friends, exchanged a glance. Without another word, they raised their hands and swung their fists at each other. Everything was understood without words. Bang! Bang! Bang bang bang! In this real man-duel arena constructed from their energy, the shockwaves produced by every collision no longer spread out, but were instead firmly locked within this area. The speed at which Saitama and King threw their punches was incredibly fast. Ordinary people wouldn't even be able to see their movements, they were so fast they had reached a point of relative stillness. King's fist smashed into Saitama's nose, immediately making his nose bleed profusely and even causing his nasal bone to fracture. But who was the bald Demon King? His injuries would always mysteriously recover in an instant. Even he himself didn't know why. Essentially, it was just a pure cheat. And as he got injured, the battle intent in Saitama's heart would grow even higher, and his strength would begin to skyrocket frantically. The strengthened Saitama also threw a punch, his fist even directly punching through King's skull, sending two bloodshot eyeballs flying into outer space. With the simultaneous activation of his two passive skills, King not only recovered from his injuries but also saw a massive increase in strength. Ultra-speed regeneration allowed King to continuously recover from injuries, giving him extremely long-lasting endurance in battle. Infinite evolution further enabled King to keep up with the bald Demon King Saitama's constantly increasing strength. King didn't initially know just how ridiculous this passive was, but now he knew. When Saitama, who had become significantly stronger, threw a punch, King would be injured but simultaneously have his physical toughness immediately raised to the same level as the strengthened Saitama. In other words, the situation from the original story where Cosmic Garou copied strength but couldn't keep up with the bald Demon King's growth rate did not exist here. Here, both of them were strengthening in sync. Chapter 180, Chapter 181, Fireworks Made of Planets. 1492 words. Chapter 181, Fireworks Made of Planets. King threw another punch, but this time it didn't land on Saitama's face. Instead, his wrist was firmly caught. "Finally caught you." The aura on Saitama's body surged once more. His right hand squeezed King's captured wrist until the bones creaked, then he reached out with his other hand and directly pinned King's head. Boom! 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 Veins bulged on Saitama's arms as every muscle exploded with violent power, charging forward while slamming King's face ahead of him. With a crisp sound like shattering glass, the two smashed through space itself, falling together into the space turbulence. Amidst the washing of the silver ocean, King shook off Saitama's palm. The wrist that had been held was severed on the spot under his control, only to be reattached in the next second. The two sides resumed their back-and-forth exchange of blows, except this time their location was no longer the vast starry sky, but the space turbulence deep within the universe. This was the deep layer of the universe. Ordinary planets and galaxies existed in surface space. Only by possessing enough power to destroy surface space could one reach the deep space filled with space turbulence. Every wisp of space turbulence contained enough power to destroy heaven and earth. Even a monster who had stepped into the god level wouldn't dare touch it casually, otherwise, they would likely be heavily injured on the spot. Within the vast and grand ocean of space turbulence, two figures flickered and clashed continuously. Every punch made the space turbulence surge, and every punch made it shatter. King's fist was caught by Saitama, but he immediately followed up with a vicious elbow strike, hitting Saitama squarely in the groin. The sound of something cracking seemed to ring out. Saitama's eyes widened instantly, and veins bulged uncontrollably on his shiny bald head. He bared his teeth in pain and decisively extended 2 fingers, thrusting them straight forward. Just as King was about to dodge, the corner of Saitama's mouth curled up, and 2 palms simultaneously pinned both sides of King's head. King suddenly felt something was wrong, and even his attempt to struggle froze for a moment. If I remember correctly, Saitama is using one hand to poke my eyes, and 2 other hands are controlling my head. Where the hell did this guy get a third hand? King looked closely and realized that at some point, an arm seemingly condensed from energy had appeared behind Saitama. There wasn't just one, there were a total of 4 extra hands. Saitama's 2 fingers didn't hesitate as they pierced King's eyeballs, causing them to burst instantly in their sockets, blood flowing everywhere. However, King didn't care about such a trivial injury. He shook his head and a new pair of eyeballs grew back. He asked with some curiosity, "Saitama, how did you grow 4 new hands?" Hearing King's question, Saitama also felt it was a bit strange. He subconsciously clenched his fists, and the 4 arms behind him performed the same action in sync. "It doesn't seem like much. I just felt like I didn't have enough hands when trading punches with you." While I was thinking that, 4 new arms just appeared. They look like energy hands, though. King. One could only say, as expected of the rule itself. He originally thought he wouldn't be surprised by any of Saitama's unbelievable techniques, but it seemed he still hadn't prepared himself enough. In that case, he would have to innovate a bit himself. Thinking of this, King immediately activated his passive, energy control. Dozens of arms slowly took shape behind him, and his entire being radiated a golden glow, like a deity descending to the world. Now it was the bald demon King's turn to lose his composure. With a face full of black lines, Saitama pointed at the large ring of hands behind King and couldn't help but complain. "No way, King, this is way more excessive than mine." After roasting each other for a bit, King and Saitama charged forward simultaneously, starting a new round of confrontation. In the deep space, the 2 demon godlike figures continued to clash, leaving behind lingering power fields wherever they passed. If the space turbulence here was an ocean, then a single drop of water scattered from this spatial sea would be enough to instantly kill Boros in his meteoric burst form. Monsters below the god level didn't even have the right to step onto this battlefield. King finally saw an opening, firmly grabbed the bald demon King's wrist, and with a burst of speed, flew upward while clutching his round head. Bang! 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 A series of explosions and shattering sounds rang out as the 2 streaks of light smashed through the space turbulence, tore through the surface space, and returned to the vast starry sky. Master King hasn't been home for 6 hours. As a qualified disciple, I should tidy up the house for Master King in advance and ensure everything is organized. Inside the large villa, a young man with short yellow hair wearing an apron muttered to himself, his hands quickly washing the dishes in front of him. But if one looked closely, they would discover that although the youth looked like a normal human, his body was actually a mechanical construct. That's right, it was Gino's. He had been living at King's house these past few days, helping him with various household chores. Even King himself had to admit that Gino's was incredibly useful as a mechanical slave of the new era. He only needed to give a single command, and sometimes not even that, and Gino's would go out and organize everything on his own. Buying groceries, cooking, cleaning, washing and drying clothes, doing the dishes, handling life's trivialities, he was an expert at everything. Dr. Cusino had originally intended to build Gino's into a combat-type cyborg, and Gino's own initial wish was the same. However, since he came to King's side, because the level of combat King participated in was simply too high, Gino's would be reduced to hero scraps if he was even grazed by the aftershocks. He had helplessly turned into a domestic-type existence. But Gino's himself was happy with this. In his eyes, helping his master organize the trifles of life was also a part of his training. By assisting King with logistics, he could sense the traces of how such a powerful person like Master King lived, thereby finding a path to become stronger. To put it bluntly, he was a fetishistic weirdo. Washing the last bowl, Gino's untied his apron, sat down properly on the sofa, and stared thoughtfully at the door. Master King seems to have gone out with Mr. Saitama not long ago. Although I don't know what the two of them are doing, they are likely playing video games. After all, Master King and Mr. Saitama have such a good relationship, there shouldn't be anything like a fight happening between them. Bang! Saitama's face distorted as he was hit by this incredibly powerful punch, blood leaking from the corner of his mouth. His body flew backward uncontrollably, smashing violently into a distant asteroid orbiting its path. King didn't hesitate to pursue, his body turning into a streak of red light as he crashed toward the planet below. The moment he landed, the ground began to crumble layer by layer. Spiderweb-like cracks spread wildly and grandly as magma erupted from the shattered surface. Saitama brushed the dust off his clothes and wiped the blood from his face. His soaring battle intent hadn't diminished in the slightest due to his injuries. Instead, he became even more excited. Truly impressive. I haven't felt this great in a long time. Again. Saitama was truly enjoying the fight now. Ever since he lost his hair and entered his invincible state, no one had been able to give him a satisfying fight when he was serious. But now it was different. His close friend King, known as the strongest man on Earth, was actually able to match him evenly, and occasionally even surpass him. It was simply fantastic. A streak of crimson light flashed through his eyes, and King's cold face appeared on his retina in the blink of an eye, accompanied by a fist condensed with violent blood energy. Good timing. Saitama laughed heartily, raising his fist high as veins bulged along his arm. Serious punch. The two fists collided, and the world went completely silent for a moment, followed by an unparalleled explosion. A terrifying energy shockwave instantly swept in all directions. The planet beneath them didn't even last a second before its core was shattered on the spot by this immense power. Fireworks made of the planet exploded in the vast and lonely cosmic sky. Blinding fire swept through the darkness, and the yellow and red streaks of light could be faintly seen clashing within it. Chapter 181, Chapter 182, The Dark Bald Law. 495 words. Chapter 182, The Dark Bald Law. The immense power unleashed by the exploding planet could not harm Saitama and King in the slightest. With King in his 8-gate state and Saitama in his full serious mode, even a planet exploding before them was nothing worth mentioning. The two fought into the depths of the universe, where even stars couldn't withstand more than a few rounds before exploding. As they passed a tiny planet during their battle, Saitama and King were unexpectedly pulled towards it. On the surface of the neutron star, Saitama and King simultaneously felt an immense oppressive force, which was the extreme pressure on the neutron star's surface. But even this level of pressure could only slightly slow down the two monsters, Saitama and King. It couldn't stop them. On the contrary, King seemed to have found a more effective method. He placed his hand on the neutron star's surface, then quickly adapted to the entire planet, and immense energy erupted from within him. The next second, the entire neutron star was enveloped by the energy released by King, beginning to deform and compress continuously. In but an instant, two silvery white knuckle dusters, with sharp spikes shimmering with a biting cold light, materialized on his fists. In just a few seconds, King had refined a neutron star, which has an extremely high density, on the spot, transforming it into his own weapon. That's right, the strongest man on Earth, King, actually refined a planet renowned in the universe in an instant. Seeing this, Saitama scratched his head in surprise. "Hey, so you can make weapons like this? I'll try it too." With that, Saitama raised his hand and grabbed at the space beside him, literally pinching the space with his heaven-defying power and grip strength, tearing space apart. Immediately after, he molded it like clay, forming the shape of a pair of knuckle dusters. "I think this is how you mold it. I wonder if I did it right." With a slightly uneasy feeling, Saitama put on the newly molded space knuckle dusters on his fists. Discovering that they fit unexpectedly well, the bald demon king immediately cheered up. Come on, now both of us have weapons, let's try again." On this day, countless intelligent races in the universe felt an unprecedented fear. Those races that had not yet been able to venture into the universe were fortunate, they couldn't feel that terror. But those races capable of venturing into and observing the universe felt extreme dread. They watched helplessly as familiar stars burst into pieces after emitting white light, and some glittering star regions instantly turned into utter darkness. And those powerful races that could feel the aftershocks of Saitama and King's battle trembled, not daring to reveal any of their coordinates. They were afraid that once their coordinates were exposed, it would attract the two monsters battling in the universe. This is the legendary Dark Bald Law. Chapter 182, Chapter 183, Pointing and Prodding. 1144 words. Chapter 183, Pointing and Prodding. On a certain planet. After billions of years of long development, countless brilliant civilizations had been born here, and the civilization currently ruling this planet had reached the stage of exploring the universe. The commander looked solemnly at the army waiting in formation below, while behind him, thousands of warships roared in unison like explosions. He shouted loudly, "Everyone!" According to the detections of various astronomers, those two unknown existences capable of fighting in the universe with their physical bodies are already less than 300,000 kilometers away from our planet. This is an extremely dangerous distance. For the survival of our civilization, for the continued development of our race, and to keep our planet from being destroyed, we must take the initiative to attack. Behind us lies the accumulation of millions of years of wisdom. It is a fleet created by the joint efforts of the entire world. This is our confidence and the guarantee for protecting our home. Even though those two unknown existences can fight a great war in the universe, which clearly exceeds our imagination, we cannot sit still and wait for death. You battle-hardened warriors. Set out with me, kill. The tens of thousands of soldiers below saluted simultaneously, then rushed onto the warships in a frantic hurry. This civilization had reached a moment of life and death. Whether peace could be restored to the world depended on this single action. In the universe, a full 3,000 massive warships were lined up neatly, row after row of main cannons aimed at the area in the distance that was constantly emitting energy storms, the energy cannons within the muzzles ready to fire. Seeing the energy storm getting closer and closer, the commander standing in the cabin of the starship looked tense, his voice spreading to every warship through the sensors. Fire! Thousands of energy cannons erupted with earth-shattering power, swirling and undergoing fusion in space to form an incomparably massive energy shockwave that surged straight ahead. When this energy shockwave, formed by the fusion of over 10,000 energy cannons, hit those two unknown existences head-on, a violent explosion erupted instantly. Seeing the hit, the soldiers inside the warships couldn't help but cheer, their eyes filled with the joy of surviving a disaster. However, the commander's face turned ashen, his whole body trembling uncontrollably as he murmured, "It's over. It's all over." On the large screen in front of him, the energy signatures of those two unknown existences hadn't diminished in the slightest, as if the energy cannons hadn't caused any damage at all. The next second, a golden light rippled out, instantly covering a range of tens of millions of miles. One by one, the high-tech starships melted away the moment they touched the golden light, turning into mechanical parts scattered across the sky. The bewildered soldiers didn't even have time to react to what was happening before their entire bodies were enveloped in a surge of crimson blood energy and thrown back to their own planet. A space fleet organized by the collective strength of an entire civilization was easily dissolved without even seeing the primary targets. King didn't care about that little interlude just now. The energy cannons released by the other party were practically nothing more than an itch to him and the bald demon king. It seems we should stay as far away from these planets with life as possible. Let's find some areas where life is almost non-existent to fight. If King hadn't possessed extremely precise energy control just now, those soldiers would have disintegrated along with the warships the moment the golden light rippled. Saitama wiped his face, casually flicking away the bloodstains. In the blink of an eye, all his injuries were healed, leaving only his strength, which had increased once again. There weren't many words between the two, only the craving for the thrill of battle. But this time, Saitama and King both consciously changed the direction of their battle, heading towards areas where no life could be felt. After advancing in battle for a few minutes like this, King suddenly noticed a faint, imperceptible attraction appearing on his body. The moment he looked up, his pupils couldn't help but contract slightly. In the star-studded sky, a bottomless darkness had actually appeared, and the surrounding light was being continuously torn and pulled into it. This dark area was overall elliptical in shape, surrounded by light trapped in a ring that couldn't escape, with a massive attraction constantly erupting from the center of the dark region. A black hole, a very special celestial phenomenon in the universe, is generally formed by the condensation of extremely high-density stars after their death. It possesses extremely powerful tearing and gravitational forces, from which even light cannot escape. Just then, Saitama's fist smashed over again. King didn't choose to dodge, but met the punch head-on with his face. While his nose was bleeding, King finally seized the opportunity. Aiming towards the black hole, his fist, shining with golden light, landed heavily on the bald Demon King's abdomen. Boom! 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 Saitama was instantly knocked back by the powerful impact attached to the fist, his figure flying backward in mid-air, crashing directly into a distance of 1,000 kilometers from the black hole. Hey! Is something pulling me? Sensing a tearing force coming from his body, Saitama looked back with a bewildered face, only to see the bottomless darkness firmly shrouding his vision. The next second, an attraction massive to the extreme erupted. The bald Demon King didn't even think about struggling and was sucked into the black hole just like that. However, the black hole, capable of annihilating all matter and even capturing light, could do nothing against a shiny bald head. Saitama was stuck in the center of the black hole, spinning repeatedly as the black hole rotated. He looked like he had fallen into a drum washing machine, his entire person having been blurred into after images. He was suddenly amused and waved to King in the distance, signaling him to stop fighting for a moment. Oi! King, come quickly. This black hole is so much fun. It's just making me a bit dizzy from the spinning. A hint of surprise appeared in King's eyes, and he arrived in front of the black hole in a flash. A terrifying attraction instantly covered his body, but it could do nothing against King, who had already reached such a level. He reached his hand inside, an incredibly huge tearing force immediately appeared on his palm, but it couldn't tear apart his physical body, which was powerful to the extreme. I see. The density inside here is also quite high. King toyed with a pair of brass knuckles made from compressed neutron stars, pointing and prodding at the black hole right in front of him. Chapter 183, Chapter 184, A Super Useful Human Transportation. 955 words. Chapter 184, A Super Useful Human Transportation. After playing in the black hole for a while, the bald Demon King also felt a bit bored. With a forceful tug, he pulled himself out of the black hole, ready to fight again. King grabbed the black hole and adapted to it completely in just an instant. Then, he flipped his wrist. In the next second, energy as vast as an ocean surged frantically into the black hole, coloring it from the inside out. The black hole, which was originally so deep that even light could not escape, suddenly became as bright as the sun in an instant. Under the continuous infusion of energy, the black hole began to shrink, eventually transforming into a pair of gloves shimmering with black light, which King wore on his hands. These gloves formed from the black hole were fingerless, so they wouldn't interfere with the effectiveness of the neutron star brass knuckles. Seeing this, Saitama immediately hopped around in the void in dissatisfaction. Hey, King, this is a bit too much. How can you collect equipment while fighting? I don't have any equipment to use. Hearing Saitama's complaint, King shrugged indifferently, his tone calm. I crafted this equipment myself. If you can do it, you can also craft a few pieces of equipment to play with. King's words immediately made Saitama lose heart. He was just a plain and ordinary human. How could he possibly turn an entire planet into his own equipment? If only I had this equipment too. Just as this thought arose, the space in front of Saitama suddenly cracked, and then a pair of gloves inexplicably fell out of it. Great. I have gloves too. King didn't even have the energy to complain anymore. This was simply the freak of all freaks. Was this the terrifying effect of the rules themselves? Another round of the great battle began. This time, both had the boost from their equipment, and the power of their battle became increasingly violent. Every attack could easily shatter a planet. They fought for an unknown amount of time. Star after star vanished because of their battle, and the brilliant starlight gradually began to thin until it grew increasingly dim. Finally, after throwing a certain punch, Saitama suddenly felt a bit tired and stopped his movements blankly. He floated in the shattered void, helplessly sitting on the surface of space and scratching his hairless head. I say, how about we stop fighting? I really can't defeat you. I don't want the games and food anymore. Saitama was completely at his wits' end. Although he craved a hearty battle, fighting like this forever wasn't the answer. This Guy King's growth speed was also ridiculously fast, and even if he was injured, it was useless. He would always recover in the next second. After all, they were close friends, and it was impossible to actually reach the point of a life-and-death struggle. Saitama also didn't want to fight anymore. Not only did it hurt like crazy when he got hit, but it was also extremely exhausting. Even a serious punch couldn't defeat King. In that case, he might as well just lie flat. Seeing Saitama stop, King also chose to stop. He was indeed a bit tired, not physically, but mentally. With a thought, he deactivated his gate of death state. The crimson steam gradually stopped emitting, and his surging physical body returned to stability. Now then, it was time for the exciting moment. King took a deep breath and then opened his attribute panel. He and the bald demon king had fought so hard for so long just to farm attribute. Now was the final moment to check the result. Name, King. Gender, male. Abilities, King Engine, Ultra Speed Regeneration, Fine Control, Energy Control, Infinite Evolution, Indestructible Soul. Strength, 4 million. Speed, 4 million. Stamina, 4 million. Defense, 4 million. Spirit, 4 million. Note, the standard for entering the dragon level is for all attributes to reach 1000. Evaluation, you have reached a realm that is unprecedented and unrepeatable, becoming a supreme level stat monster. Aside from Saitama, who is the rule itself, you can no longer find an opponent. 4 million. Looking at his unbelievable total attributes of 20 million, even King himself couldn't help but chuckle. This was a bit too unbelievable. But it was normal after farming for so long. After all, he had fought hard with the bald demon king in the starry expanse of the universe for a full hour or two. It would be against heaven's will if he didn't become stronger. His current stats were more than 20 times what they were before, and his strength had increased by more than 1,000-fold. As mentioned before, stats aren't a simple 1 plus 1. If the current king were to fight the king from the end of the battle with the gods, he could probably make the opponent explode just by blowing a breath. At this level, he should be able to go to the high-dimensional world and attack the home turf of the gods. Thinking of this, King decided to go back and rest for a while. Once he was ready, he would take the bald demon king with him to crusade against the gods. After deciding to stop the sparring, King simply had a thought, and Blast, who had been on standby far away, teleported over. He then took the two of them through a spatial tunnel straight to Earth. Inside the silver-white spatial tunnel, even King couldn't help but remark that Blast was a super useful human transportation. Wherever they wanted to go, they just had to tell him, and Blast could teleport there directly, no matter how vast the distance. Chapter 184, Chapter 185, Speak Up, Damn Mouth. 1284 words. Chapter 185, Speak Up, Damn Mouth. 2 days later. Amidst the somewhat surprised gazes of pedestrians on the street, a middle-aged man clad in a red Ronin robe, a toothpick in his mouth and a sword at his waist, walked leisurely with a stoic expression. The reason for everyone's surprise was simple. This person was the former S-Class Rank 4, now S-Class Rank 6, Atomic Samurai. Look, that middle-aged uncle just now looks like Atomic Samurai. It really seems to be him. I heard before that he always dressed like a wanderer. I didn't expect him to actually look like this. He really has the air of an old-school swordsman. Yeah, he's an S-Class Rank 6 hero. I heard his swordsmanship is incredibly badass. He can slice a monster into tens of thousands of pieces in an instant. Hearing these words of praise, the corners of Atomic Samurai's mouth almost curled up to the sky, and the frustration in his heart dissipated quite a bit. However, in the next second, a very discordant voice blasted into his ears like a fired cannonball. What's so badass? Atomic Samurai seemed to get trashed in that monster incident not long ago. If it wasn't for the heroic rescue by the strongest man on Earth, King, he'd probably be lying on the ground fast asleep by now. The children by the roadside thought they were speaking softly, but how could their whispers escape the ears of a great swordsman who was also an S-class hero? Atomic Samurai's face instantly turned green. He even felt the urge to go over and personally refute them, but he gave up in the next second. Forget it, what they said isn't wrong. I'd better not go and humiliate myself further. Atomic Samurai's heart became lonely again, his eyes filled with helplessness. What the children said was indeed true. He was beaten like a dog in that epochal battle, and it was indeed the strongest man on Earth, King, who came to the rescue and saved him from death. Finding a random restaurant to sit down in, Atomic Samurai, who hadn't eaten all morning, felt somewhat famished. After ordering a few dishes, Atomic Samurai stared blankly at the clean tabletop, his mind seemingly falling into an abyss. Ever since that great battle, he had been pondering whether his path of the sword was truly right, or if it was fundamentally wrong. His pride and joy, the atomic slash, had been easily countered by that powerful monster wreathed in flames, by Sun Sperm. From beginning to end, the opponent had insta-killed him with just a single punch. And the Sun Sperm, who in his eyes was incomparably powerful, had now become a pet in the home of his fellow S-class hero, One Punch Man. The Sun Sperm, who could insta-kill him, had become another hero's pet. For a self-respecting great swordsman like Atomic Samurai, this was undoubtedly a massive humiliation. Sigh. Atomic Samurai sighed deeply as the dishes he ordered were served. Though the food looked, smelled, and tasted excellent, it felt like chewing wax in his mouth, as if he couldn't taste a thing. Just then, Atomic Samurai's peripheral vision suddenly caught sight of an incredibly familiar figure. That tall figure had blonde hair. Although his back was turned, one could feel an oppressive aura from him that seemed capable of suppressing anyone in the next second. That man, is it King? The moment this thought appeared, Atomic Samurai's eyes instantly lit up. Why is he eating at this restaurant too? Atomic Samurai unconsciously touched the sword at his waist. His gaze gradually became firm as he set aside the pride in his heart. In the eyes of this great swordsman, seeking guidance from someone far stronger than himself was not considered a humiliation. He wanted to ask King what a true sword was, and what the true path of the sword was. Thinking of this, Atomic Samurai shoveled the food in front of him into his mouth in just a few bites. He wiped his mouth and couldn't help but complain internally that the prices at this restaurant were higher than others, yet the taste was unusually mediocre. After swallowing the food, Atomic Samurai stood up abruptly from his seat and strode over to King. At this moment, King was enjoying an influencer restaurant he had recently seen online, his face turning greener with every bite. Damn it, not only is it so expensive, but it's also so disgusting. What a piece of crap. To hell with influencer restaurants. These past 2 days, King only wanted to relax properly. Once he had relaxed enough, he would unhesitatingly drag the bald demon king along to charge into the high-dimensional world and attack God. And in the next second, a somewhat hesitant voice suddenly appeared by his ear. King, what a coincidence. You're eating at this restaurant too? Hearing the slightly familiar voice, King turned his head in confusion. Seeing the other person's wanderer attire, he instantly realized his identity. Oh, it's Atomic Samurai. Standing before the strongest man on Earth, Atomic Samurai, for some reason, felt every cell in his body trembling wildly. It was as if a soft, cute little bunny had encountered a tiger at the top of the food chain, shaking uncontrollably. The subconscious trembling of his body made Atomic Samurai's words come out somewhat stuttered, which made his expression look even worse. Damn it, don't lose face. What on earth am I doing? Actually, this wasn't Atomic Samurai's fault at all, it was purely due to King himself. Now, under the effect of the passive skill Infinite Evolution, he had become extremely powerful, and his life level had far surpassed that of humanity itself. This also created a problem. King's level crushed all current humans. Whether he wanted to or not, humans would involuntarily feel awe upon seeing him. This was a near-instinctive awe and worship, an instinct of the law of the jungle engraved in the genes, as well as reverence for the strong. Seeing Atomic Samurai's nervous expression, King was full of question marks. Wait, Buddy, what are you coming to see me for? King also hadn't expected that while he just wanted to relax and check out some food spots, he would run into his fellow S-class hero, Atomic Samurai. One can only say the world is truly small. Sometimes, when fate arrives, it can't be stopped. Under King's gaze, Atomic Samurai grew increasingly nervous. He even subconsciously gripped the sword at his waist, and a sharp aura burst forth uncontrollably from him. Sensing the surrounding air becoming as sharp as blades, King's gaze also gradually became somewhat unfriendly. This guy comes over, calls my name, doesn't say a word, and now puts on a combat stance. He's looking for trouble, isn't he? If possible, King actually didn't want to fight Atomic Samurai. After all, this kid was too weak. A light flick of the finger might leave him unconscious. But if this guy insisted on looking for trouble, King didn't mind giving him a little lesson. Atomic Samurai, meanwhile, was holding it in until his face was flushed red. He quietly reached his right hand down to the flesh of his thigh and gave it a hard twist. Speak up, you damn mouth. Feeling the intense pain, his face twitched involuntarily, and he finally broke free from that mysterious state of awe. Atomic Samurai, who only barely escaped that bizarre state by relying on pain, couldn't help but break into a cold sweat. This is the power of the strongest man on earth, King. Just one look almost made me lose the ability to resist. Chapter 185, Chapter 186, Still Like Ants on the Ground. 844 words. Chapter 186, Still Like Ants on the Ground. For a moment, Atomic Samurai gained a deeper understanding of King's power. Before, he only felt that King was far stronger than himself, but as for exactly how strong, he had no idea. Now, Atomic Samurai finally understood what a truly powerful person was. A truly powerful person can suppress someone just by standing there with their so-called pressure. In front of King, Atomic Samurai felt that as a great swordsman, he didn't even have the courage to draw his sword. He had practically turned into a soft, cute little bunny. What is it, Atomic Samurai? Do you need something from me? King's low, steady voice exploded in Atomic Samurai's ears like thunder. He finally snapped out of it, his expression instantly becoming incredibly serious and solemn. Atomic Samurai took a deep breath and said earnestly, King, I have a request. Could we have a spar? I want to see the gap in my own swordsmanship. Hearing Atomic Samurai's invitation, King was stunned for a moment and instinctively prepared to refuse. He didn't feel like dealing with this little guy. After all, the gap between Atomic Samurai and his current level was too large. Even a spar wouldn't yield any results. Under the crushing weight of sheer stats, all techniques were futile. King also felt he had nothing to teach. The only aspect of martial arts he had touched upon was the Emperor Fist. All his other skills relied on transcendent stats. Just then, the system popped up out of nowhere, offering options for such an insignificant matter. Ding! Congratulations to the host for triggering options. Option 1. Accept Atomic Samurai's request and have a spar with him like an adult playing with a child, letting him feel the flaws in his swordsmanship. The only requirement: avoid accidentally crushing Atomic Samurai to death. Option 1 Reward: System item ×1. Option 2, refuse Atomic Samurai's request, enjoy your own time, and let Atomic Samurai return to achieve an epiphany in swordsmanship on his own, making him understand that only one's own strength is true strength, and following others' paths is ultimately an unadvisable measure. Option 2 Reward: Random system item ×1. Option 3, kick Atomic Samurai away and humiliate him ruthlessly, telling him he is nothing without strength. Tell him to get lost to avoid staining the host's sight. Breathing the same air as a weakling like him is the ultimate disgrace. Option 3 Reward: Battle Bliss Title ×1. Battle Bliss Title increases all attributes by 2% during combat. The boost effect disappears automatically after leaving combat. Oh! It's actually a 3-option choice. King couldn't help but widen his eyes. This was the first time he had seen 3 options together, a situation that had never occurred before. Option 3 was definitely the first to be excluded. Although King was a bit mischievous at times, he wouldn't go so far as to humiliate a fellow hero. After all, the other party wasn't a bad person, and he wasn't someone who bullied the weak or lived by the law of the jungle. There was no need for that. As for option 1 and option 2, it was simply a matter of accepting or refusing Atomic Samurai's request, and the rewards were identical. King automatically ignored the third option and, after some thought, chose the first one. He also wanted to see how massive the gap was between his current level and a pathetically weak dragon level. Fine, I accept your request. After several seconds of silence, just as Atomic Samurai thought King would refuse him without hesitation, he agreed. Hearing this, Atomic Samurai was overjoyed. His excitement led him to bow to King. Thank you so much. When shall we begin? King looked at his half-eaten trendy meal. He was about to toss it aside when the image of a certain old man suddenly flashed through his mind. He was silent for 2 seconds before speaking somewhat helplessly. No rush. Wait until I finish my meal. Better not to waste food. After all, every grain comes from hard work. But the chef at this restaurant was a real beast, making perfectly good raw ingredients taste as bad as crap. Finishing the meal in a few bites, King walked out of the restaurant with Atomic Samurai and flew toward the distant suburbs. After the earth-shattering battle with the bald demon king, starting a Baby-level fight with a dragon level felt a bit strange. Landing in the suburbs and stepping onto the soft yellow sand, King looked at Atomic Samurai across from him, whose presence was so weak it was almost negligible. His expression grew increasingly odd. Is he a bit too weak? Or am I too strong? The difference in their presence was no longer a division between strong and weak, it was greater than the gap between Tyson and an ant. Even though Atomic Samurai was standing right in front of him, in King's perception, he was still like an ant on the ground. Chapter 186, Chapter 187, A Complete and Utter Mockery and Crushing. 1092 words. Chapter 187, A Complete and Utter Mockery and Crushing. To avoid accidentally killing Atomic Samurai with a single wave of his hand, King crooked his finger, signaling for Atomic Samurai to make the first move. Come on, hit me with your strongest attack. Let me feel your swordsmanship. In reality, King's primary objective at the moment was to first gauge the power of Atomic Samurai's techniques to determine his level of strength. Hearing this, Atomic Samurai's first reaction was to feel insulted. He, a great swordmaster, a publicly recognized sword saint, was being asked to strike first. But the moment he remembered that the person standing opposite him was King, this sense of humiliation instantly vanished. Fine. Since I am the weaker one here, it is only right for me to make the first move. In that case, Atomic Samurai slowly drew the long sword at his waist. The moment it left the scabbard, a sharp, dazzling cold light deeply pierced their vision. Then, King, please brace yourself. This is my ultimate killing move, Atomic Slash. Atomic Samurai took a step forward. The sword in his hand instantly transformed into a series of afterimages dancing through the air. The sharp blade slashed out tens of thousands of times in an instant, and countless sword marks appeared on King's body. Discovering that King hadn't defended at all and had simply taken all his atomic slashes with his bare body, Atomic Samurai widened his eyes in shock, even biting through the toothpick in his mouth. Are you kidding me? Facing the strongest man on Earth, Atomic Samurai had been fully prepared from the moment he attacked, constantly guessing how his opponent would respond. He had thought that King might rely on his supreme understanding of martial arts to block every single one of his atomic slashes. He had also thought that King might use his overwhelmingly powerful strength to forcibly interrupt the execution of his atomic slash, preventing him from even using this ultimate move. But the one thing Atomic Samurai had never considered was that King would actually withstand all his attacks without making any defense whatsoever. King lowered his head, looked at his clothes which didn't even have a tear, and couldn't help but ask in confusion. Hasn't it started yet? Only then did Atomic Samurai realize that not a single wound had appeared on King's body. He instantly deflated. His high ponytail seemed to droop at that moment. It's already over. Huh. This time, it was King's turn to be unable to hold back. Seriously, dude, you actually attacked. In King's perception, he hadn't even sensed the slightest hint of an attack landing. It was as if gentle breezes had lightly brushed against him. Atomic Samurai's all-out atomic slash couldn't even cut King's clothes, leaving not a single trace behind. King no longer wore ordinary clothes. His garments were now manifested from his energy, requiring no cleaning and being countless times tougher than regular clothes. After all, he didn't want to end up naked after just any random fight. Ordinary clothes were ultimately too fragile in terms of hardness. King fell silent. He had thought Atomic Samurai might be weak, but he hadn't expected him to be *this weak. Maybe you should try again? Faced with King's somewhat awkward tone, Atomic Samurai felt a surge of blood rushing from the soles of his feet to the top of his head. His hand gripping the sword hilt unconsciously tightened. Am I really this weak? Do I really have no chance whatsoever to shake this man before me? No. I don't believe it. I just haven't found my own path of the sword. If I can find my own way, I might still have the power to fight. Atomic Samurai's resolve gradually solidified within. A true expert must have a heart that believes in their own invincibility. No matter who he faces, he must believe he is the strongest. For someone seeking to forge their own path of the sword, they must possess the courage to charge forward unwaveringly. They cannot shrink back because of a setback like this. Thinking this, Atomic Samurai raised his blade high once more, enunciating each word clearly, his gaze as sharp as sword energy. Then King, please enlighten me. Atomic slash. Tens of thousands of slashes erupted once again. Countless sword marks gleaming with a cold light streaked through the void, instantly blanketing the sky and earth as they surged towards King. This time, King did not choose to withstand them with his body again. Perhaps in the eyes of ordinary people, Atomic Samurai's sword couldn't even be seen as an afterimage. He could slash tens of thousands of times in the blink of an eye, reaching an extreme of speed. But in King's eyes, every single one of Atomic Samurai's sword swings was like a slow-motion replay. Even the direction of his muscle exertion and the focus of his gaze were displayed in minute detail before him. This was an absolute, overwhelming superiority in reaction and strength. Immediately, King extended a single finger. Each time Atomic Samurai's blade came slashing towards him, he would gently deflect it with his fingertip. After one atomic slash, Atomic Samurai froze completely in place, his expression utterly petrified. A wisp of breeze blew by, stirring up the yellow sand on the ground. The rustling sound echoed in the air. Atomic Samurai's robes, styled like those of a wandering swordsman, were gently lifted by the slow wind. The next second, his sword suddenly emitted a sharp, metallic clang then instantly shattered. Amidst the flying everywhere of metal fragments, the corner of Atomic Samurai's mouth slowly curved upwards, his eyes filled with unwillingness and helplessness towards himself. Did I still fail? He turned his head, looked at King who wore a strange expression, and deeply bowed his spine. As expected of the legendary the strongest man on earth. To have broken my atomic slash in such a manner. Atomic Samurai admits defeat. This time, Atomic Samurai was truly convinced. From Atomic Samurai's perspective, he saw clearly that every single one of his slashes had been gently blocked by the other party with just one finger, and this result persisted for over 10,000 consecutive slashes. This could only mean one thing. That was, the other party never considered him an enemy at all. From start to finish, it was a complete and utter mockery and crushing. How tragic this was. For a great swordmaster, it was even more tragic and laughable. Don't forget to like and subscribe to KUMO-AUDIOBOOK.